county representative choosing their sporting Mount Rushmore. Some decisions are easy.
And I was seeing teachers who had never expressed any emotion whatsoever lose their mind when Sonny was running in that home straight, trying to catch that goal spot.
Others are controversial.
Mayo's greatest celebrity fan now helps him earn his place on Mayo's Mount Rushmore is Kevin Kilbane.
Join the debate across all our social channels at Off the Ball.
George O'Connor, 17 summers in purple and gold.
And catch the live decision making over the next few months on OTB AM, live every weekday at 7:30 AM on OTB Sports Radio.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
It's OTB Sports Radio. It's OTB AM like you've never seen us before. A very good morning to you and welcome to OTB AM on this beautiful Friday morning, April 24th. We're delighted to have you along with us. As always, at 7:30 on a Friday morning, we're all decked out, as you can see, in our finest clobber for the occasion, and we'll have lots more detail on that to come over the course of the morning. But if you are watching and wondering what the hell is this clown doing, even more than you would normally wonder in his lovely monkey suit this morning, well, I can tell you that we're all getting involved here and Off the Ball and on several of the country's biggest radio stations as well to get right behind #Formal Friday. So it's your opportunity to dress up in your finest clobber. It turns out you don't have to sit around in your vest and your jocks all day. You can actually get properly decked out. And I'm not even wearing shorts. I've got the full kit on me this morning, and Owen will be doing likewise as well when he joins us a little bit later on. So if you haven't heard, we are dressing up in our finest clobber this morning. We're going to work from home in our finest. The goal is to raise as much money as we possibly can for our frontline heroes. So that is the objective over the course of the day. And we'd love you to get involved. If you do, you can head along to offtheball.com/donate, where you can make a little bit of a cash donation. Any small amount at all would be hugely appreciated. And also, I mean, the key is to get dressed up in your finest and share a picture of that as well this morning, just to let everybody know that's what you're doing. So lots more on that over the course of this morning. As I said, we'll be keeping the gear on for the course of the day, so no stopping us. Coming up on the show this morning, it's a packed show as always for you on a Friday. John Giles in just a couple of moments' time. He was with Nathan last night to select this time his all-time Chelsea 11. So we'll see what degree of controversy there was about that with John. We're back with you then at 8 o'clock. Myself and Owen will be picking through the sports pages this morning. Plenty of stories doing the rounds today, coronavirus related, and plenty more besides as well. Laura Treacy's Cork Camogie all-star fullback, and also one of our frontline staff, and will be joining us just after about 8:30 or 8:40 thereabouts to chat about exactly what life is like for Laura at the minute and how she's coping with that degree of sport in her life as well. The NFL draft got underway last night. Roger Goodell's basement was front and centre. Bloody impressive basement it was as well. I need to have a look at my own setup here, having seen what he was up to last night. We'll get the latest on that and exactly some detail around Joe Burrow, the first pick, and plenty more as well. Mike Carlson at 10-9. Mount Rushmore is back on the agenda this morning, and this time it's Donegal. I've never seen so much debate about a county. It's raged over the last few days about who exactly should be in and out. Enda Coll is the man with the selection, and Kieran Cunningham as well is going to be on to keep him honest. That's just about 9 o'clock or thereabouts, so we don't do want you to get involved in that. And I'm going for the 5 in a row of crappy quizzes at 9:40. So that's the plan. We're going to see you back at 8 o'clock with the sports page. But first of all, the latest in the series we've been running on Thursday nights. Chelsea gets John Giles treatment on their all-time 11.
Let's talk about this Chelsea side then, this all-time 11. I'm really interested to see who you go with, because over the last few weeks, as we've gone from Liverpool, Manchester United, Tottenham, Arsenal, there's probably been a real mix of players from 60s, 70s and modern players, because all those clubs have had a lot of success in the 60s and 70s. Whereas, as you say, this Chelsea side, while they had performances in cup competitions in the 60s and 70s, they never won a title. And then you come forward to the modern age of when Mourinho arrived in and when the Abramovich money arrived in, they've had any amount of success with Premier League titles, European Cup winners. So the balance here may be slightly different, I guess, than other teams that we've picked over the last few weeks.
Yeah, well, as I said, Leeds in my day were a terrific team. But there were lots of different teams winning the trophies, but they didn't. Again, I want to repeat myself. They didn't challenge for the league, and they were very good when they won the cup. They were a very good team. but they weren't as successful as the team that when Mourinho came in and the other various managers, where they were winning, as you say, Champions League and that. Nathan. So I don't have another. There aren't a lot of players from the team that I played against in the first 11 that I have.
Yeah. All right, let's get started then.
Okay.
Goalkeeper?
Czech. Peter Czech. Is it Peter or Peter Czech?
Yeah, Peter Czech, yeah.
Peter Czech. Outstanding, I think, Nathan. Very calm, very good goalkeeper. I'd have him because Peter Bonetti, the late Peter Bonetti, was a very good goalkeeper in his day. Courtois was very good as well. But I think Czech was exceptionally good. So I've got him in goal. Yeah,
Peter Bonetti sadly passed away as well over the last couple of weeks from COVID-19. Such a brilliant reputation for a couple of decades at Chelsea. Was he a keeper who would have pushed Petr Cech close?
He was very good in his day. As you say, he had a long career. He played for England. I think what happened against his reputation, that Gordon Banks got injured or was ill for a match against Germany in the World Cup, and he came in, and I think he made a couple of mistakes for England were winning 2-0, and they were beaten 3-2. England were beaten 3-2 in the end. So that came against him for a long time. But he was a brilliant goalkeeper. I think he must have played about 15 years for Chelsea. No, he was a nice lad as well, top class lad, but a very good goalkeeper. But he didn't have the presence that Czech had. Czech was a big fella, dominated it. Peter was actually in those days quite slight for a goalkeeper, but he was one of those athletic goalkeepers, great shot saver. But he was a terrific goalkeeper.
Czech has a lot of records in the Premier League, and he's won a huge amount of medals, and he pretty much did everything he could do when he was at Chelsea. Would he be right up there, even when you're thinking of best Premier League goalkeepers of all time? Oh,
definitely. He'd be in it. The best Premier goalkeeper, I think, was Schmeichel, myself. But Czech would be there. Yeah. There was a few in those days, but he was certainly a top class goalkeeper. I think what spoiled him in recent times, where the introduction of playing out from the back, didn't suit him. But I wouldn't hold that against him. I think it's overdone anyway. I think goalkeepers playing out from the back is overdone, and I think the main thing has been solid and saving, and that's the big thing, and he had that. But I think it did go against him in recent years.
Let's look at your back four then. We might start at right back.
Azpilicueta.
Okay.
I've got it right back. Nathan, I think he's a very, very good player. Gets on with the job, not spectacular in any way. I have him at right back. I've got John Terry, who was, I think, one of the great defenders, captain, great presence, one of the best defenders I've seen. He wasn't particularly quick. He was good distributor of the ball as well, real leader and a real defender for Chelsea over the years. I think he was one of the main reasons for their success.
That distribution you talk about there from Terry maybe isn't something that is really focused on, because when you think of his partners at Chelsea, quite often it was seen as the other centre half was the ball player, and that John Terry was the heart and the sleeve guy. And likewise with England, maybe Rio Ferdinand was the ball player, yet John Terry was the guy who'd get stuck in, who'd throw his body on the line. Was his ability actually on the ball underestimated at times?
I think so. I think he was good, Nathan. My take on it is when you get John Terry, or you say Rio Ferdinand, one is the player. But let's put it this way: I'd rather have two John Terrys than two Rio Ferdinands.
Right.
Because defending is the main thing. And he could use the ball well enough. He doesn't, like defenders like that don't have to be great on the ball when they're in a good team. Now, I think I said to you last week with Norman Hunter and Don Reevy. When you win it, you give it to the players that can play. And like in John Terry's case, he wouldn't give the ball away, but he had players around him that as soon as he won it, he could give it to them, they'd get on with it. But he could play. But he was one of those players that if anybody's going to charge down a shot, he'd be the one doing it, getting headers away. A real defender, Nathan. So, and I think some players like Rio Ferdinand would look easier on the eye. But I would take two John Terrys and two Rio Ferdinands.
his leadership qualities as well, maybe mocked at times when people think back to the Champions League final and he arrived out in his full Chelsea kit. But in terms of a captain and being the leader of that Chelsea side under Mourinho, do you look at that side of his personality as well, like so crucial for everything they've probably achieved over the last 15 years?
Oh, definitely. I think he was the main man in the team, Nathan, for what he did. He scored a fair goal. I know it's a bonus, scored a fair amount of goals coming up from corner kicks and free kicks and that. But he was a bit like Norman Hunter in that he gave everything he had in every match that he played. And he was a really, really top defender with the right attitude. Could use the ball well enough and defend well. He was a real leader. I think he was the main man in many ways for Chelsea in their successful years.
So who have you got alongside John Terry then at centre back?
I've got Ricardo Cavalli.
Right.
I think they were a good partnership in at that particular time. He was a very good player. So they suited each other. As I said, he could play. He was probably a classier player on the ball than Terry. So they did complement each other in that way.
No Chopper Harris?
No Chopper Harris. No, I'm sorry to say, in many ways.
Was it close?
Yes. Yeah, Chopper could play. Chopper was good. He had a good head on him for playing. Nathan. He wouldn't have been. He was very calm, collected in what he did, and he had this name of Chopper, which was it was well deserved in many ways. But he could play as well, like a lot of those lads could. But I was tempted to put him in, but like when you're picking a team like this, you can't put everybody in, Nathan. So he's not in, and I've gone for Ashley Coll at left back.
Okay, because I think we debated Ashley Coll last week and whether or not he should be in Arsenal's all-time 11. Didn't make that, but has made this, again, in terms of probably a very different player from the other full-back in Azpilicueta, had probably a bit more about him going forward.
Yeah, I would think so. I think Azpilicueta was probably a slightly better defender, but there again, Ashley Coll made it up. He's good left foot. He prepared to go for it. I think his attitude was good. I think he was a good player at Arsenal, as we know, as well. But he was in the England team, and he was really one of the top class left backs in the game.
Yeah, there was definitely a period of his career when he was probably arguably the best left back in European football. Yeah,
he was thereabouts. Yeah, he was a top class player, and really did his stuff for Chelsea.
Are we going all the way back to 1964 and Eddie McCready doing you for him not getting in the team?
No. Actually, I met Eddie McCready, as you do with players afterwards.
Yeah.
And there'd be no problem. I would never hold anything personal. It was what it was in that day.
Yeah.
And we did what we had to do in that day. But when we meet up afterwards, I met Chopper Harris since, and Norman has met him, and they'd have a drink. You'd have a drink together, and that. Be no bother in that, Nathan. It was all part of the game.
Was Eddie McCready of the quality that he would have been in contention for this all-time 11 in that left-back spot? Yeah,
definitely. And Chopper would be as well. Chopper at right back. I was definitely not sure of what to do about it, Nathan. It's very difficult when you're picking a team like this. And those lads were Chopper Harris and Eddie McCready were from my time.
Yeah.
Now that's like in those days, every team or nearly every team had a Chopper Harris or an Eddie McCready. That was the name of the game in my day.
Yeah, well, it's hard to pick too many faults, I think, with that side that you've picked there of Petr Cech in goals, a back four of Cesar Azpilicueta, John Terry, Ricardo Cavalli and Ashley Coll. So into midfield, I think you're going with a 4-3-3 this week?
4-3-3 this week, Nathan. Yeah, okay. I've gone with Frank Lampard, one of the best. I mean, what a player he's been for Chelsea over the years, Nathan. You know, he came from West Ham. I think West Ham let him go, and he went to Chelsea and was there for years and years. What a player for Chelsea. You know, you couldn't dream of a player better than Frank Lampard. Goal scorer from midfield, Nathan, and his goal scoring record. I think he's the goal scoring record at the club. Yeah,
he is 211 goals for Chelsea.
Amazing, coming from midfield. Now he wasn't a creative midfield player by any means, but he had enough about him not to lose the ball in the middle of the field. But I'd always describe Frank Lampard and Gerrard, Stevie Gerrard, as goal-scoring players coming from midfield.
Yeah.
They weren't like generals in the midfield, and they were more getting on the end of things. And there was nobody better than Frank Lampard at doing that. They've down to goals. Was it over 200 goals? That's astonishing for a player that was playing from a midfield position.
And regularly scoring over 20 goals a season as well from midfield. It's hard to think, certainly I can't from watching football, think of a player who was so good, as you say, at making those runs from midfield, of timing his run, at arriving in the right place at the right time more often than Frank Lampard.
No, well, Gerrard would be similar to him, except he scored more spectacular goals. I think Steve Gerrard did. They were very similar in the way. That's why I think they couldn't get on playing for England. Nathan. I might have mentioned this before, because in the game they say, well, they were both good at the getting on the end of things, which they were. But there has to be a beginning to get to an end. And I think when both of them played for England together, neither of them were capable of starting it to get there, to begin the situation to get to the end of it. Now that's why I thought Paul Scholes should have been in the middle of the two of them at that particular time, but he wasn't. But that was my take on them. Between them, I think individually playing for the different clubs at what they did, they were fantastic. But they needed somebody to begin the move for them to get at the end of it, and they didn't have that in England.
Was Lampard as well also the beneficiary of being the right player with the right manager at the right time? So he'd had a couple of good seasons with Chelsea, and then Mourinho arrives, and it seems Mourinho says, you're going to be my guy, you're going to be the player I'm going to build this team around over the next few years. And what a team that turned out to be. Oh yeah,
well you had Terry as well, and there's nothing better, Nathan, than having a manager that has confidence in you. If you have a manager who has no confidence in you, it's very hard to be a top player. And he deserved it. I mean, he deserved to get the backing of the manager. Of course, it was in Mourinho's interest, because he saw what was in him and backed him and gave him credit for what he did and applauded him. There's nothing better for a player when you have a manager like that can do that. And of course, they have to have the ability as well to do it, and he did it in a big way.
So Frank Lampard, I guess, was an automatic selection in this all-time Chelsea 11. Who else have you gone for in midfield?
I've gone for N'Golo Kante.
Again, one of your favourite players from the last few years?
Yeah, he's a new boy. I don't usually pick the best player who was only there for a year. I think he's been there for 2 or 3 years. But this guy is phenomenal. I mean, he had a good time at Leicester, as we know. But I think he plays a World Cup winner. He's won a league medal and a cup medal at Chelsea while he's there. And week in, week out, all the time, he's given everything he's got, Nathan. He's a great character. I love watching him, and he's a fantastic player.
Strange over the last few weeks when football was still on that, even though he'd had a few injury problems, that Frank Lampard, it seemed, had found a midfield that didn't have N'Golo Kante in it.
When recently?
Before football stopped, that actually maybe Lampard didn't see Kante in the way that a lot of other people saw him.
Well, I think he was injured, Nathan.
Yeah, he'd had a few injury problems as well.
An injury. I think if he's fit, he'll put him in, definitely. And they've got this new kid, haven't they? Young Gilmore, is it Gilmore?
Yeah, Billy Gilmore, yeah.
Well, he's the best. Well, he's a young lad. He's the best young lad I've seen for a long, long time. But I think he'd have Kante in the team. I think he left the other lad out, the Brazilian lad, Jorginho.
Yeah.
I think he left him out of the team there for a while. But I think we've taken his first team. I think Kante will be in. I'll be surprised if he isn't.
Yeah.
But he was carrying an injury, definitely, and he was out of the team altogether through an injury. So I'd be surprised if Frank Lampard wouldn't have him one of the first down on the team sheet.
Well, they're both in your all-time 11 midfield. Who else is in there? I've
gone for Fabregas.
Right. So he makes the Arsenal 11 and the Chelsea 11.
He has. He started with Arsenal, as we know, and then went to Chelsea. I don't think he really fulfilled his potential, Fabregas. He was very, very good. I think when he was at Arsenal, I thought he was marching on to be one of the best in the world. and that didn't happen. He was still very, very good. He was a very good player for Arsenal, and he was a very, very good player for Chelsea. He's a lot of ability, Nathan. He could pick a pass, as they say, get a few goals. He had the ability. I don't know. I think the drive went out of him from what I expected of him in England.
Yeah, he was obviously at a very different stage of his career when he came back to Chelsea after going to Barcelona. And so at Arsenal, he starts out at 17, 18, playing week in, week out. And then he comes to Chelsea and he wins a couple of Premier League titles. Was he a different player when he came back to Chelsea at 27, 28 from when you remember him as a kid at Arsenal?
Well, I don't know. I think he was different, but not in a good way, Nathan.
Right.
I think at 27, 28, like in that position, you should be at your peak, where you have the experience behind you that you control the game. Actually, I think he played better for Arsenal when he was a young lad than he did for Chelsea. Although he was still very, very good. He was still a very good player, and obviously I wouldn't be picking him in the team if I didn't think he was good. But I always felt he could have been better. I don't think he marched on to be one of the greats from the time I saw him as a young fella, where I thought he would do. But he was always very, very good. Very, very good player.
When you have conversations about Premier League teams of all time, Fabregas rarely comes up in the midfield conversation because you have Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, Keane, Vieira. Should he be in that mix, or, as you say, he could have been in that mix, but he just didn't kick on the way he should have? Exactly.
I don't think he deserved to be in that mix with them. But I think the potential that he showed at Arsenal as a young fella, he didn't mature in that way, or he didn't come on in that way to fulfil the potential that he showed early on. That's why I don't want to be too cruel on him, because he was still a very, very good player. But when you look at the players that you mentioned, Vieira, Keane, Scholes, I wouldn't put him quite as high as them.
And I know you like to give special mentions as well as you're going along for the various positions, like other midfielders who would have come into the mix for Chelsea. Like even in recent times, Nemanja Matic was there, and I know you were a big fan of him. The likes of Michael Essien and Claude Makelele. Who else would you have had in that sort of midfield mix?
Well, Makelele was there. Matic was very good. They had a lot of very, very good players. Mata, I think, was a very good midfield player for them. Nathan, who would have been in the mix before he went to Manchester United. They had a lot of good players.
Yeah, Dennis Wise, or even Ruud Gullit when he arrived.
Yeah, Ruud Gullit. They going back a long way. They had Ray Wilkins was there at one time. But Ray Wilkins left when he was a young fella as well. So they've had a lot of good players over the years. And when you're picking these teams, Nathan, I enjoy doing it, but it's terrible. I find it very difficult to leave players out.
Yeah,
who've been really, really good players. But if you're picking the team, obviously you can only pick the 11, so some have to be out. But that's the hard part of it.
That's the name of the game, John. So your front three then, who've you gone for?
I've gone for Didier Drogba.
Yeah.
I've gone for Jimmy Greaves as well. Well, you know what I think of Jimmy Greaves, and I know he was in the Spurs team, but he did score 100 goals for Chelsea before he went to Italy, Nathan.
Yeah.
Actually, I think
started out at Chelsea.
He's the first player to score 100 goals for two different teams. Obviously, he scored whatever he did, 300 and something at Spurs. We all think mostly he's a Spurs player, but he did start. I think it was a 17-year-old, Nathan, and he played in the Chelsea team. Weren't such a good team at that time. So, like, Greaves is a genius. Was a genius of a footballer. There's no doubt about that.
In his last year at Chelsea, which earned him the move to AC Milan, he scored 41 league goals in 40 appearances.
Yeah, and they weren't such a good team, Nathan. Chelsea were a very ordinary team when he came into it. He was just phenomenal. Went to Italy, as we know, and he scored a lot of goals there, but they didn't take to him for some reason. I think the coach, the coach was a hard nut, real hard nut, and was on his back all the time. But he kept scoring goals for them, but he obviously didn't like it, and I think his missus didn't settle down there. He was delighted to get home. I think he was a real homeboard, Jimmy, and came back. As we know what he did for Spurs. But as a player, I mean, to get the amount of goals that he did was incredible.
Well,
even when he was a young fella.
As you say, breaking into the team at 17, he scored 132 goals in 4 seasons at Chelsea, from 17 to 21.
Incredible. So I'm always reluctant to pick players from both teams, Nathan, but I've done it with Fabregas as well, and I've no problem with Jimmy Greaves. I think I've got a lot of stick from Chelsea supporters. I know they'd have to be the older ones not to pick Jimmy Greaves.
Yeah. Well, I think when you look at that record...
He was a genius. He was a genius, Nathan, in my opinion. Jim Greaves was.
So Drogba, you've really gone for that spine of that Mourinho team of sort of 2004, 2005 of Cech, Terry, Carvalho, Lampard and Drogba. And Drogba was just the finishing touch, the icing on the cake for that side.
He was brilliant. He's the only player, they say he's playing up front on his own. He's the only player I've seen that actually played better, in my opinion, on his own.
Right. Why was that?
I don't know what it was with him. He was a big, strong fella, as we know. His control was good. But the other players seemed to get in his way. He could cover the positions and obviously a great thing to have because it meant you had a spare player when he was doing 2 jobs in one. And this is my opinion, anyway. He could hold it up. He was getting goals. He was scoring with his head. He was scoring with his feet. He was a fantastic player. But he didn't need anybody up top to help him. I don't think, anyway. I saw it once or twice, or a few times in his career, where he had somebody up beside him, and he didn't play as well.
Yeah.
He just needed that space, I think, Nathan, that he could do whatever he wanted to do in that space.
I don't envy you trying to pick your final selection when you look at the likes of Gianfranco Zola, Eden Hazard, Peter Osgood, Damien Duff, Arjen Robben, the likes of Kerry Dixon, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Bobby Tambling, who was their all-time record scorer before Frank Lampard passed them out a few years ago. There was a lot of good attacking players at this club. Yep. Who'd you go for?
I have gone for Eden
Hazard, right.
Yeah. The Jimmy Greaves' time, as you say, and Chopper Harris and Eddie McCready, they were very good, Nathan, but they didn't have the success that they had when Mourinho came into the club. And that's why, obviously, I'm overloaded with players from that particular time rather than from my own time, because the success came at that particular stage where they were winning Champions Leagues and Cup finals, and they've had an amazing record over the last 15 years or so. So most of the players, obviously, as you say, I picked are from that particular time.
And would you look at Hazard, obviously, in terms of trophies, he won a huge amount at Chelsea, and he won the Premier League a couple of times, part of the Europa League winning team on a couple of occasions as well. Do you look at Hazard as a player who has totally fulfilled his potential? I
think so. I think he was better at Chelsea leaving than when he came. I think he was a really, really top class player and was hugely influential in recent times, Nathan. Now, I don't know how he's doing. Apparently he's not doing so well at Real Madrid.
Yeah, he's had a lot of injuries.
Has he? So I would expect him. I think it was a good signing. If I'd have been a Madrid manager or coach, I would definitely have signed him with what I saw of him at Chelsea, where I think he's about 27, 28, Nathan. That he should be hitting his peak. And he looked as if he was ready to do that. And maybe the injuries have stopped him. But he was a player that could do it on his own, Nathan. There's not many of them around now that when you gave it out to him, he wasn't looking to lay it off. He wanted to take people on and scored really, really, really good goals for Chelsea. I think he was a top-class talent, and hopefully, he gets over his injuries and shows that at Real Madrid.
I think this is the first week where we haven't had an Irish player in the selection. Was Damien Duff close?
Well, I have him down as a good mention, Nathan. I couldn't see him getting in front of the players that we've been talking about. Like Damien was a terrific player, and I loved him playing. But I found it. I mean, he had Adrian and Robben there. Do you remember him? He was on
either side of Drogba. They were lethal.
Lethal, and Damien was a very, 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 very good player. But I couldn't honestly. I'd love putting the Irish players in, but I have to really believe that they should be in, Nathan. Damien was a lovely lad, terrific player, but I just couldn't put him in that particular team.
Well, your team is, if anyone missed it, and you can listen back online on offtheball.com, the full Chelsea all-time 11 from John Giles. Petr Cech in goal, a back four of Cesar Azpilicueta, John Terry, Ricardo Cavalli and Ashley Cole. In midfield, it's Frank Lampard, N'Golo Kante and Cesc Fabregas. And then a front three of Jimmy Greaves, Didier Drogba and Eden Hazard. John, great stuff as always.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
They spoke about your arm not being down beside your side. I mean, this is not Irish dancing.
OTB Sports Radio.
Basketball would have been my main game.
The brand new sports radio station from Off the Ball.
That's my point. Don't play for us if you're a proud Englishman.
Now broadcasting 24 hours a day. Live on the Go Loud app, Alexa.
You have a whole new world of possibilities.
Google Home, tune in, and offtheball.com/radio.
This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM.
Yes, indeed. It is OTB AM. It's Friday morning. You're very welcome along, and I hope you enjoyed that piece of John Giles in conversation with Nathan last night, picking his Chelsea 11, his all-time Chelsea 11, and what a team that is. No room for Damien Duff, though. Owen Sheehan, come on in.
What's the crack, Adrian? How are you keeping?
How are you getting on?
Yeah, all good. Happy formal Friday.
Yeah, you're scrubbing up well in your monkey suit.
Generally tend to scrub up well whenever I tend to scrub. So thank you very much. Good confidence boost this morning. The issue here is that I actually can't see you on my end of things today, but I trust the audience will be able to tell me just how good you look this morning.
I've gone with the spotted Dickie Bow look on. So, no.
Are you a Dickie Bow kind of guy whenever the suit is called for?
Black tie, I would tend to go with a Dickie Bow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like to make a bit of an effort, and then really sort of still have that bit of a rebellious aspect on, that I'm not actually going properly black tie, but like you're doing there. You'd be far more of a conformist, I suppose, than I would.
It's true, yeah. You're very, very out there with your fashion sense. Again, this is not something that I need to inform anybody about. Anybody who's watched this show on a Friday morning will be able to know just how snazzy you are.
Yeah, well, we would have had a lot of comments about the social justice warrior jumpers that I would have worn over the last little while. But look at, each their own and all that sort of stuff. But it's a mindset, isn't it? Like, it sort of shifts you off your regular access of throwing the old t-shirt on and a bit of a jumper, and like, it's a bit of a half-arsed approach to the day. Whereas now, here we are in our finest clobber. Like, it brings a new level of mental edge to it. I find I could run with this on a regular basis.
I guess I could as well. The tracksuit needed a wash today anyway, so it's actually worked out perfectly for me that I can actually just wander around in my suit here today. It's like just going to go about the day-to-day basis in this three-piece. I think this is probably my second wear out of the suit. So I'm thankful for everybody involved that this is actually an idea they came up with. So I'm getting bang for my buck at long last.
Yeah, well, you're looking sharp, Owen. You're looking very sharp indeed. It is all for a great cause as well. It's Formal Friday here and Off the Ball and across some of the country's top radio stations as well. And we want you to get involved as well. So if you're looking at us wondering what the hell are those two Egypts doing in their Dickie Bows of a Friday morning, well, it is to support our frontline heroes. And we want you to get along and donate as well and get involved and throw on your best gear. Don't need to sit around your jocks all day. Feel free to get involved. Offtheball.com/donate, by the way, if you want to give a few quid that you can throw the way of those frontline heroes, please do that. The total has been taken along very nicely over the last 24 hours, and I'm sure as well today. So do head along there and make a donation. We want you to get dressed up. No more shorts for the day. We want to see you running your 5K in your tuxedo if you can. Nathan Murphy's been promising to do that, which is something we really should see with some sort of a GoPro action on that. How many keepy uppies can you do in your wedding suit, not your birthday suit, and maybe you just want to work from home in your wedding dress? So whatever it is you want to do, we do want to see photographs of it as well. So put it up on social media, lash it into your WhatsApp group, and hit the hashtag Formal Friday. And as I say, get on to offtheball.com/donate to help raise funds for our frontline heroes. And we're all going to be getting involved in Off the Ball over the course of the day. So it is for a great cause. And do head along there and make a donation as well. I mean, it's right and proper on that we would have got dressed up today, given that I think one of the topics we have this morning in our time on OTB AM, I think over the last couple of years, I'm struggling to remember a moment of that was more contentious than this one.
I couldn't disagree more, to be quite honest with you. I think this has been blown up into something that it's not. You're talking about the Mount Rushmore, of course. Am I correct in saying that?
That is correct.
what's happened here is that in the interest of Donegal feeling important about itself, they've created a debate that makes the county feel like it is churning out the international sports stars every single year. So we've got Enda Coll up later on, who's obviously been tweeting about this for it seems like 4 months at this point, about the Donegal Mt Rushmore. And we've got this Paddy Bonner versus Shay Given debate, which has obviously been turned into some sort of, I guess, illusion of a social media war. And I would say that he's feeling very important right now, and I would say Donegal people are thankful for him for making their county feel so important. This is not contentious. This is not a big deal whatsoever. This is Donegal. If you've got any debate in Donegal, you can just put them all on your Mount Rushmore.
Interesting take. I suspect that the two lads we have on later on, Enda, as you mentioned, and Kieran Cunningham as well as the Irish Daily Star, are going to have slightly different takes on that. Paddy Bonner versus Shay Given has been really the big bone of contention here. I suppose there's been some conversation around some of the other positions as well that we'll get into a bit later on. It's, for me, boils down to the battle between whether you value more quality over iconism, I suppose might be the way to look at it. And I think that's fundamentally what it boils down to. And initially I was sort of perplexed, a bit like yourself, that this was a debate at all, but I've been really coming around to the idea over the last while that maybe the value of an icon, maybe I had undersold the value of an icon, because I would have had Shay Given in there straight away. But actually, like, Paddy Bonner was an icon. And this is one of the interesting questions to come out of it. Why was Paddy Bonner more of an icon than Shay Given?
Pretty obvious, isn't it? The moments he's given to Irish football in the 90s. Like that is like the most famous sporting moments. You can attach Paddy Bonner to it. You can't do the same thing with Shay Given. What was Shay Given's most famous moment in an Ireland jersey is a far more difficult question than what was Paddy Bonner's most famous moment in an Ireland jersey.
Yeah, I suppose maybe he doesn't. I suppose what I'm getting is I don't feel that Shay Given gets the love probably that he deserves, like, regardless almost of Paddy Bonner. Like, there is a little bit of the Robbie Keane's about him in that he did incredible service for his country and just tends to get forgotten about in a conversation like this. He should be, given the quality of the guy, just should be a very straightforward pick for Donegal's Mount Rushmore.
Well, like, I would have Shay Given in the category of Irish football legend. Would you not? Like, I think he's Ireland's greatest ever goalkeeper. No question about that. And by dint of that very fact, I think he's deserving of his place. Like, we can get into the Mount Rushmore conversation later, where I think both of them should be included. But just at this moment, if you wanted to do Paddy Bonner versus Shay Given, I think we both agree that Shay Given is the superior goalkeeper. But I would definitely be on the side of things that if you had only one head remaining on your Mount Rushmore, say if you did a Northwest Mount Rushmore and only one Donegal person could get into it, Paddy Bonner, I think, actually pipped Shay Given to the post, because there is more to these lists than just the quality of the individual as a goalkeeper, for example. There is so much more to it. It is about your association with that person as a county, your association with that person as a country, I think. And I think as a nation, Paddy Bonner is more beloved than Shay Given, which is bizarre because Shay Given obviously is the better keeper. And what the difficult thing here is that when you start comparing Shay Given to Paddy Bonner in terms of how beloved he is, you will automatically start getting into the area of, well, is Shay Given not beloved? Well, that's not the case whatsoever. It's just that Paddy Bonner is right up there as one of the most famous Irish footballers of all time because of what he did.
If it was a Mount Rushmore of Donegal sporting moments, I'd be with you. I just think that if you look over the longevity of Shay Given's career, he played in a far better standard league than Paddy Bonner did, was at some points in his career considered to be world class. There's no getting around that. He was linked with some of the best clubs on the planet at the time. Now, obviously been linked to them, and to be fair, he did play for Manchester City at a time when the money had come in as well. Been linked with them and actually going to them, obviously, is two slightly different things, but I don't think you get away from that conversation. And Paddy Bonner, let's face it, was never in that mould, but he was a goalkeeper for moments. He's had some very high profile errors that we'll, I'm sure, get into in more detail later on as the case unfolds, as have most goalkeepers who played at that level for that length of time. But
Could I just make a point that actually supports your argument fully here? If you look at what's happened in Mount Rushmore so far, nobody even considered Seamus Darby for the Offaly Mount Rushmore. Now, it was because he obviously is probably the most famous Offaly footballer of all time around the country, but he was clearly not the best Offaly footballer of his generation, and Matt Connor was the one who eventually managed to sneak his way into that Offaly Mt Rushmore. If you were using the same logic in this Paddy Bonner versus Shay Given debate, then Shay Given makes it. The only thing that's different, however, is that Matt Connor managed to achieve the things that Seamus Darby did. Shay Given wasn't part of the team that Paddy Bonner was for the Republic of Ireland, and that team is just not held in as high regard as the Paddy Bonner team.
Yeah, and they broke the mould, which is a conversation when it comes to the Donegal GAA and who should go up from that side and the Gaelic football side, who should go up there. It is almost a replica conversation about somebody who broke the mould and then somebody who came afterwards that might have been higher in the quality stakes, but there is a value obviously in breaking the mould. A couple of comments coming in on David Carr on YouTube says that he's not overly confident that he can fit into his suit since the lockdown started, wondering if there's an alternative option. I think just lash it on you if it's, get it on and open buttons, whatever you need to do to get it on, go for it. And Noel Cal says, Donegal have no real love for Given. It's Bonner and Coleman they love from the horse's mouth, he says. So, I mean, I don't know if that means he's a Donegal man.
I'd say it probably is. It's off the top of my head, it's got to be Given, Bonner, Coleman, and Michael Murphy. Does Jimmy versus Seamus Coleman really is the debate, isn't it? And
well, Brian McAniff is the one that I think that it will be in a serious contention for that. Like, you just have to look at his CV and you can rattle it off. It's incredible, and also he absolutely, utterly broke the mold for Donegal. So, Jimmy Guinness came afterwards and was part of the '92 team, obviously, but I think I would find it difficult to not include Brian McAniff in that list.
Well, they're very fortunate that they have a very underwhelming history. They've only got 2 All-Irelands. It makes the job far easier for Enda.
I do appreciate that all your commentary so far has been Kerry-related as well. So, look, we'll come back to that just a few moments' time. But do get your thoughts in on it. It has, despite what Owen is saying, it has been hugely contentious over the last 48 hours or a little bit more, and I'm sure there's going to be lots more contention on the show today as well. So 8:10 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. Do keep in contact with us over the course of the morning. Wherever it is you're at, we do want to hear from you. If it's thoughts about Donegal or beyond, we'd love to get your thoughts in. So here's what's happening in the world of sport at the minute. Liverpool edging closer, we're told, to being crowned the Premier League champions. UEFA say they relax their approach to European seasons, finishing early. The prospect of leagues being voided out of the question now. UEFA urging individual nations to decide for themselves which teams should be crowned, leaving it nice and loose, of course, if the seasons can't be completed because of the coronavirus pandemic. UEFA saying decisions can be made on the basis of sporting merit, where there's a public perception of fairness. Interesting mix of words there. It may result in leagues determining their placings by points per game. It could result in anything, really, is the short story there. Eric Dyer has until the 8th of May to respond to an FA charge of misconduct that's arising from his trek into the stands, of course, after Spurs FA Cup 5th round exit to Norwich City last month. And European athletics have been cancelled, the championships, and will not be rescheduled. The games were due to take place in Paris in the last week of August. So that's the world of sport for you this morning. It's just gone 8:10, and here's what's coming up on the course of the show this morning. We're going to be picking through the sports pages very shortly to let you know exactly what's happening across the back pages this morning. Laura Treacy is a Cork Camogie All-Star fullback, and much more importantly than all of that at the minute, she is one of our frontline staff, and we'll get Laura's thoughts on exactly the impact that's having in her life at the minute, and obviously the lack of any quality sport in her life too. We'll talk to Laura just about 8:40 thereabouts. The NFL draft got underway last night. Roger Goodell's basement, front and centre. Bloody impressive basement it was as well. Mike Carlson is going to join us on the line just before 9. Get his thoughts on the initial rounds there. Mount Rushmore, Donegal's Mount Rushmore after 9 o'clock. Enda Coll of Off the Ball and Kieran Cunningham of the Irish Daily Star, the two people who are tasked with refining that Donegal list. And we've a crappy quiz coming your way as well at 9:40 this morning. So that's all en route for you over the course of the morning. We do, as I said, want to hear from you. We do want you to get dressed up in your finest clobber as well. So get up on offtheball.com/donate. And if you want to get into your tux or your suit or your wedding dress or whatever sort of formal gear you have, lash it up on social media as well. Put up a photograph or a video there explaining to people why you're getting involved, and include the hashtag Formal Friday. Right, it is time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
We're going to kick things off as we always do on offtheball.com for you this morning. Interestingly enough, the crappy quiz is the main story up there for you this morning. So, I mean, if you want to go and indulge
quiz.
in that. The classic quiz, as it's been called. Yeah, the Drive for Five, obviously, was the big talking point this week that probably had more talkability, in fact, than the Donegal Mt Rushmore, and plenty more up there as well. The French Open being postponed for a further week in a new tour schedule. I mean, issuing a schedule at all at the minute seems like such a dumb exercise, but nevertheless, I'm sure we'll go through the motions over the coming months as we get all that sorted out, and plenty more as well up on offtheball.com.
I'm going to go to the Irish Independent this morning. Fairly striking headline here. Be ready to move quickly, which is a quote. It's like Navy SEALs going in to kill Bin Laden or something like that. It's actually Croke Park Chiefs urging counties to have plan in place to restart club game. So this is a good story here. The GAA have contacted county boards, according to Donegal Boyle's story here, urging them to be ready to move quickly with regards to club fixtures as they step up preparations in the event that the association is given the go-ahead to stage matches this year. We're still awaiting full formal confirmation as to what is actually going to happen, but clearly this communication has been leaked, and it's looking like the GAA are looking at the probability of a sizable club window coming first if restrictions are put on attendances, and that is obviously something that is going to happen. There will be restrictions on attendances, but like you wonder if people are just going one step too far in actually assuming that under 5,000 means everything under 5,000 is going to be okay. Like, while the red light has been given to everything above 5,000 for the time being, or after May 6th or whatever, it not necessarily means that there is a green light for everything under 5,000. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any further movement on that over the next couple of weeks. You suspect that there will be. And McKillop feels Tokyo Games may not go ahead next summer. This is Michael McKillop, who's obviously won gold medals at 3 Paralympic Games. He's concerned about Tokyo 2021 going ahead due to the global nature of the events. And then finally, Kenny can deal with snobbery, insists Ollie Horgan. It's Daryl Horgan. Ollie Horgan is elsewhere in the newspapers this morning. Daryl Horgan insists that his former boss, Stephen Kenny, can deal with the snobbery attached to his League of Ireland background. And then elsewhere around the Irish Independent this morning, Michael Burney is writing about his 1,000 press-up challenge, trying to do it in the space of an hour. Dan McDonald concludes his list of the best League of Ireland players from the past 20 years. And Rory O'Connor asks, could a version of the NFL draft spread Irish rugby's young talent more evenly?
It's a good question. I was only thinking about that during the week. I don't know exactly how it would work, but it's a pretty phenomenal thing that I think we'd all love to see more of that, particularly at the minute. The Irish Examiner for you on this Friday morning. A happy snap on the front page there, as you can see, of Irish football fans, Sarah Carroll and her parents, Margaret and Mihal. Irish fans getting the chance to grill Niall Quinn and Stephen Kenny today on their FAI Facebook Live page today at 1:30. If you want to get along and check that out, it's hosted as well by Down Syndrome Ireland. Elsewhere on the Irish Examiner for you this morning, testing times in every sense for Irish footballers, writes Liam Mackey here. How can any contact sport be played at all as long as social distancing regulations are still required, is the question that's asked by Liam Mackey there. And he also writes about the FAI's plans to support League of Ireland clubs, essentially paid for streaming of games and FIFA funding are the two things that came out of an interview with Niall Quinn on News Talk yesterday, and is reported by Liam Mackey here as well. Whether there's anything deeper than that, we have yet to see, but kind of surprising that that's the sum total of it as far as we can see it. It's live streaming for games, and I could easily see how that would work for Bohemians, Rovers, Dundalk. A lot of the top clubs get big attendances. You can see that as a viable option, but what do the other clubs do that are really struggling for attendances and to motivate a sizable enough audience to go and pay for these games online? I think it's going to be a significant challenge to motivate enough of them that would end up sustaining that club. And interesting that they are the only options that have been put forward by Niall Quinn at the minute. We shall see how that unfolds over the next while. GPA expecting rise in demand for counselling services. John Fogarty writes here, with so many intercounty footballers and hurlers' self-worth wrapped up in their playing careers and no collective training or games having taken place for 7 weeks, the GPA are aware of what their members are experiencing. I mean, it was definitely struck me as something that I think the same point will very much stand for a lot of people who are being temporarily laid off from their job at the minute, or in fact losing their jobs, that a lot of people's self-worth is wrapped up in what they do professionally. And then in the absence of that and the general lockdown, I'm sure that those services, not just for footballers and for sport will be required across the board. And finally, from the Examiner, Jamie Gardner, on that UEFA opening the door for playoffs to resolve Champions League places. It stated that if competitions cannot be completed in full, then the next option should be to restart with a different format in a manner which would still facilitate clubs to qualify on sporting merit.
The Irish Times this morning leads with Sean Moran's piece that the Cool camps are still making plans for a summer of action. Again, this falls into the grey area of sports-related events that will certainly have under 5,000 people at them and that are set to go ahead before the end of the summer. So they're obviously going to press on. I guess what can you do other than plan for the fact that it is going to go ahead and just hope that there isn't a pin put in it? I guess that the authorities aren't exactly sure how things will be looking come July, August time when those cool camps tend to get underway. Malachy Clerkin, meanwhile, says, if these sports are your bag, whistle a happy tune. And the quote in bold from the piece, you may very well think that the golfer next door is a gobshite. You may know it in your very bones, in fact. But you need to see his return to the bosom of gobshitery as a chink of light. And he's not wrong there. And sad story here from Sean Moran. Goff's passing phrase links to golden age. So the passing of two distinguished hurlers from the southeast within the past week, a further fraying of the living links between our new decade and the golden age of the 50s. Oliver Goff's death at 84 on Wednesday takes away the last hurler to have played for Wexford in the All-Ireland finals of 1955 and 56, winning medals as a centre fielder or wing forward both years, and coming in as a replacement in 1955 against Galway. Like, really kind of heartbreaking piece. Such a legendary team, that Wexford team. Like, I mean, Liam Griffin and Diarmuid Littling, who we had on earlier on this week talking about their Mount Rushmore, will be the first people to tell you that. And then also last week, Waterford and Ballydurn lost 1959 All-Ireland winner Joe Harney at the age of 84. So Sean Moran with those two pieces of information there, which I actually didn't realise. And also here, we've got quotes from Lee Keegan. We might have to concentrate on getting a championship in 2021. Mayo footballer believes it will not be easy to return to playing this summer. And someone like Lee Keegan could possibly do with a break. The amount of miles that he's got on the clock, the amount of years he's put into the inter-county game, it's not going to do any harm for players like him to have a full summer off if that's actually what ends up happening here, if the club game doesn't actually get back underway before the end of the summer. There could be an unintended consequence of all of this, where a few ageing bodies actually manage to go a couple of seasons longer than you might expect. So that is the one chink of light you could possibly take from having no GAA this summer.
Yeah, somebody like Johnny Sexton, it was struck me that a lot of conversation about whether he's going to make World Cup 2023 or not. I guess it's still in the balance, but this, you imagine, sure as hell can't do any harm. The London Times, meanwhile, a photograph there this morning, obviously relating with the story we mentioned, the charging of Eric Dyer by the FA for his run into the stands in March after their FA Cup exit. Jesus, March. It seems like it was 12 months ago that happened, and it seems so utterly pointless as an exercise as well for the FA to be going through the motions with it. But look, I suppose they got Martin Ziegler on those UEFA hopes of a playoff for the European positions. Mentioned earlier about the GPA and trying to support players as well whose value is wrapped up in their sport. Well, Paul Hurst has a story here about Manchester United encouraging players to take on open university courses, it says. It seems like a smart enough thing to do. And he also writes that the club are also recommending watching meditation videos, reading blogs on mental health, and learning how to deal with the stresses of having children in the house for 24 hours a day. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, learning how to deal with the stresses of having children. I don't know how they're going about that. But it seems like a fascinating prospect. And if any Manchester United players have cracked that nut, they really should go and start writing blogs of their own and publishing videos, because I think there'd be a healthy audience for that type of sweet content.
Absolutely. I think there will be. I'd certainly watch that. Back page of the Irish Sun this morning is "You're having a laugh. Prem blocks UEFA's plan for qualifications. The Premier League chiefs will defy UEFA calls to bring in a playoff system to determine European slots." FIFA cash, again, picture the piece beside Niall Quinn here. Niall Quinn suggested FIFA support could be tapped into to get the League of Ireland going again. They met on Wednesday and examined several options about how to restart the domestic season. Like playing behind closed doors is one of the options there to perhaps get some bit of action up and running. Whether or not that would lead to increased revenue streams, I think there's a big question mark over that. Martin Lipton then mentions an £850 million blow Prem clubs are facing an 850 black hole from gate receipts if fans are banned from grounds until the end of the year. So it's obviously just not the television money that keeps these Premier League clubs afloat, but at least it will be something if they were to get underway behind closed doors.
Yeah, the Irish Daily Star this morning, Jim Magilton is after the Northern Ireland job, so essentially so they can have a pop, as Mark McCadden writes here, at Stephen Kenny and his Republic of Ireland team. Ian Barclay obviously looks to be the number one of the favourites, certainly at least, but the former Michael O'Neill, number 2, Magilton, keen at a shot at it. And Ken O'Connor's a piece there with Kevin McManaman, who says that he imagines lockdown is what football retirement must feel like. So struggling to get to grips, obviously, with the reality of no football. Kevin McManaman, who himself must be one of those players you speak about in relation to getting to the end of days in a Dublin shirt.
A back page of the Irish Mirror is Gary Neville, who says, warning, get a degree or a second job. Neville urges EFL players to begin retraining now because football jobs and cash will disappear fast when crisis ends. Remember this? The Mirror asks, the FA did, and they've now charged Dyer with misconduct. UEFA says points mean prizes. Premier League bosses could decide the season on a points per game basis after UEFA gave the go-ahead. And game will never be the same, says QPR boss Mark Warburton. And Conor McManus fears end is now a year closer.
That's the Irish Daily Mail. End in sight, writes Mike Keegan about those UEFA recommendations that have been interpreted in different ways across the board, it has to be said this morning. Decided on sporting merit is the interesting phrase that's come up across these. A nice vague phrase to move leagues in the right direction. Exclusive interview inside with Robbie Fowler and Niall Quinn, as we mentioned, his plans to live stream League of Ireland games, writes David Kent there in the back of that FAI interim deputy CEO's interview with News Talk yesterday.
The back page of the Herald is a fairly snappy headline. Snobbery. Kenny's Euro record shows he can mix it with the best, says Daryl Horgan. And Reds set to be the champs. Liverpool appear set to be the 2019-20 champions, whether the campaign is finished or not. And also the top 50 League of Ireland stars has been carried in the Herald as well this morning. And the Herald also asking the question about the potential of 2 championships in 1 year. So obviously that kind of points to the idea that perhaps after September into the winter, you could start the 2020 championship, finish it early next year, and then start next year's championship as well. I think that's probably going to be like a bit of a sardine tin, which is going to be good for nobody if they try and do that. But we'll have to wait and see.
The Guardian, Rob Kitson here, the lots that is repeated across the other page as well, but one story that isn't, Rob Kitson, on rugby clubs' dissatisfaction at World Rugby's plans to play extra international tests once the coronavirus restrictions are lifted, in their bid obviously to recoup lost revenue there, and clearly clubs not happy that their players will be required to give even more time to the international game when the clubs themselves, their very existence, is under threat.
The Irish News this morning, Harrison fears championship may be fan-free. This is down forward Conor Harrison, who fears a behind-closed-doors championship would feel like a series of challenge games, and admits players face some big decisions when the green light is eventually given for inter-county football to return. And Andy Waters saying GA awaiting clarification on criteria for return. So they're waiting on clarification from the Irish government on the medical hurdles that would need to be cleared before any headway can be made on whether playing matches behind closed doors or in front of a maximum 5,000 fans is viable. And there is that Ollie Horgan story. He wants a winter season, so the FAI should implement a return to the old style winter football season for the SSE Electricity League. So I think that's probably not the worst idea in the world, especially when it comes to this year.
And finally, the Telegraph showing us what it might have looked like. It was cruel on Liverpool fans this morning, but what it might look like for them had the season actually played out. A celebratory Jurgen Klopp and his players there getting the bumps. Sport faces lockdown until next year, and female players homeless amid contract uncertainty with clubs is the last story there in the Telegraph, which I think wraps us up on the top line of stories across the back pages this morning. A couple that we will just touch on the sporting merit idea that's come up across from UEFA statements yesterday on their recommendations for where clubs need to go with deciding their leagues, that, you know, if competitions can't be completed in full, the next option should be to restart, they say, with a different format in a manner which should facilitate clubs to qualify on sporting merit. Like, it's very vague. It will be one of the first things that I would say off the back of it. Like, it's nothing more than really sort of the very minimal amount that they could have said about it, you would think. And clearly also not everybody's going to be happy with this. There's going to be a lot of disgruntled clubs. You wonder if we end up with a lot of legal wranglings. They're just recommendations. These aren't hard and fast rules. Clubs are going to be disgruntled, and how far will they be willing to go to state their case that actually no, they should have been the ones that should have made the Champions League places. So interesting times ahead.
Yeah, like when you say sport, is this a points per game sort of basis when you're talking about sporting merit?
I think they can. I think that's the vagueness that I'm talking about. They've just left by publishing the word sporting merit. What does it mean? Like, it leaves it open to interpretation for the Bundesliga to interpret whatever way they want, the Premier League to interpret it a different way. It's very vague. And that's why I'm saying that I think that in that context, if I'm a club that had started to gain a bit of momentum over the last few weeks and kind of was feeling that actually, Manchester United, the prospects of getting into the Champions League were suddenly far more than they were at some point a few months ago, and we were on a bit of a run, and you're deciding now that the points accumulated and to tally that up to the end of the season, we're out, when really we feel we should have been in. We're taking this to court. I think that clubs aren't going to roll over on this one.
I'd be interested to hear the actual legal possibilities there if something like that was to happen. That I'm sure in an extenuating circumstance there is a possibility for each individual league to say, no, this is how we're actually going to decide it. And tough luck, to be honest. Like, it feels a lot harsher on someone down like the bottom of the table. Like, if you're looking at the relegation zone at the moment, when there are 3 teams and 27 points, and one of them is actually in the drop zone currently in Bournemouth, that would go down as a result of goal difference because they've all got the same amount of games played. At the points per game thing makes sense, but it's only going to solve a very fractional amount of cases here. There isn't going to be anything that's going to be solved, from what I can see in the Premier League anyway, by a points per game basis. It is just going to be a pause on it and proceed. I do think every league should have the ability to do whatever they want, so UEFA being vague isn't the worst thing in the world, in my opinion. Like, if the Bundesliga manages to get up and running, then they won't have this issue. The Premier League will be posed with very, very different questions because they are not going to be up and running at the same time as the Bundesliga. I think that's certainly one thing that we can say for certain at this point. So, I don't know, like, the ideal situation is that it doesn't have to come to this, but a decision has to be made. I'd rather they just grasp at the nettle and actually say, right, points per game, or right, let's just take your standings where you are, and this is brutal, but we have to have some sort of relegation and promotion if we want next season to feel like a legitimate season.
Yeah, that'd be my point, because so what they haven't said is take the standings as they are. That's what they have not said. And actually, if they had even uttered that kind of a phrase, it starts to mentally prepare clubs like a Bournemouth, for example, that this might be something that we're facing down the track, like worst case scenario. And like, maybe there is an opportunity that if, let's say, the football was to be written off for this season and we were to be returning next season, with, if there was a possibility to get back, even at that stage, that, is there a plan that you can put in place where a week out from the start of the season you could run off playoffs for the relegation positions, for example, or for the Champions League would be less feasible probably, and even how feasible is that, like, for a club to suddenly over the course of a week or two have their fate decided as to whether they're going to be in the Premier League or the Championship. Logistically, obviously, it's an absolute disaster. But I just think it's a bit vague and very much open to legal wrangling. And I'm going to assume as well that clubs are not going to be happy. And I think you could end up with months and months and months of legal wranglings over it. We'll see. Plenty more in those papers as well. And a couple of them that we might get to before we leave you at 10 o'clock this morning, we might get back to a little bit later on. But we've plenty to come over the course of this morning. A reminder as well that we aren't just dressed up in our dicky balls and our finery just for the crack. We are taking part in Formal Friday. You can head along to offtheball.com/donate to get much more detail on all of that. It's for a great cause. We're making donations and raising awareness for our frontline heroes, and we want you to head up there and make a small donation, whatever it is that you can. We'd love to have you involved in that as well. If you are going to get dressed up in your fineries, do let people know about it as well. Put it up in your social media accounts, drop it into your WhatsApp groups. Bang the drum generally about what it is you're doing today. So up next, we're going to be chatting to the Cork Camogie star frontline worker Laura Treacy. But first, let's hear from Donegal footballer and Garda Sean Patton, who caught up with Nathan last night.
It's absolutely amazing. It's crazy to think, in this day and age, we're in the situation we're in. And looking at the country so far, we've probably handled it probably one of the best out of most of the countries, and And as you say, a lot of people are actually taking on the advice, and the work's absolutely amazing. Everybody's doing, you know. You look at the people that are really coming into contact with it, like the ones in the HSE there that are, you know, they're working day in, day out, and it's frightening. But, you know, on our side of things, it's kind of it's crazy to maybe have to stop somebody that's, you know, especially with the weather we've been blessed with the weather, and somebody that wants to go to the beach or wants to go for a walk with their kids to somewhere that is unnecessary, and kind of advising them not to, and telling them to maybe go back to their home and go for the walk within the 2 kilometers of their house. Like, it's something I didn't think it was going to be part of the job, but unfortunately with the situation we're in, it's probably one of the most important things we're gonna have to do for the next number of months. And, you know, to be fair, 90% of the people, if not more, have been extremely compliant, and they do listen, and anybody you come across is genuine or going to the shops, you know. So it's a strange time to be kind of just thrown in to the front line, you know.
Yeah, you can check out that full piece with Sean Patton. It's up on offtheball.com, as well as plenty more good stuff there as well. And we do want to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180. If you want to get your comments coming into us, send us in your photographs of how it is you're dickied up for our very formal Friday. And do head along, as I said, to offtheball.com /donate as well. So that is all up there, and you can go up and check it out. We're going to be talking to Mike Carlson in just a little bit. The draft, NFL draft, got underway as well, so that's all up there too. So we do want to change tack slightly though. As mentioned, Laura Treacy is the Cork Camogie fullback, all-star, and a nurse at St Finbarr's in Cork City, and we're going to catch up with Laura very shortly. Just want to give you some of the headlines that are up on offtheball.com as well this morning. Lots of good stuff going on up there. As I mentioned, it's not only the crappy quiz, it's the classy quiz for you this morning, because we're all, myself, Nathan, Ger, and yourself, Owen, and you've got some sort of a weird background going on there. Have we managed to identify what it is that you're actually, what religion? Where is it? What is it? What is that behind you?
I'm surprised that someone of your cultural standing wouldn't be able to.
I was going to say it's cultural standing. Well, listen, you've set it up there anyway. Is it like Versailles? Palace of Versailles?
Got it in one. I knew I could believe in you, Adrian. Absolutely. It is with Versailles.
Having recorded the classic quiz yesterday and spent 30 or 40 minutes, obviously generally needless minutes in all of your company, I'd actually initially thought it was a church of some sort, but there we go. But no, looking sharp on.
Your French knowledge knows no bounds.
Isolt Cody has been in touch with us. Good morning to you, Isolt, and making the point on that informal where yourself and myself look related. A scary moment, she says. I mean, she thinks it's scary.
That we look related?
Yeah.
That is one of the most gingest things I've ever heard uttered.
Not a phrase I've ever heard uttered before either. But Sinead, there we go. Do keep the comments coming in. Whatever you want to give us a bit of abuse, whatever it is you want this morning. We're all ears. 8:37 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM with myself and Owen, and lots more to come between now and 10 o'clock. But right now we want to change tack slightly. We've Laura Treacy, who's the Cork Camogie fullback and all-star, of course, and a nurse at St Finbarr's in Cork City on the line. Good morning to you, Laura.
Morning, how are you?
Good, how are you getting on?
Good, thanks. I'm on my day off today, so you've gotten me out of bed nice and early this morning.
Well, apologies for that, first off the bat. You're ordinarily based in the Kilpasky unit, St Finbarr's. Has that changed given the requirements that have cropped up elsewhere?
So not at the moment. We're deemed as an essential service, I guess, and we're quite an urgent clinic. So for the moment, we've actually remained open, luckily enough. We've a ginormous waiting list as well. So I think that kind of is holding us open as well, because all these women do need to be seen in a certain time period. So for the moment, we're lucky enough to stay open. So I wouldn't be deeming myself on the more high-risk front line at the moment. I'm one of the lucky ones, really, who has escaped that so far.
Yeah, it's. Is there a feeling that we've sort of, the curve has very much been flattened? Obviously, Laura, and we're headed very much in the right direction. The death toll continues to creep in, obviously day by day, and the numbers there are pretty grim. Any sense that we're past the worst of it now, and that you may actually remain as is?
I do think people have been so compliant with all the little rules and regulations that were brought in by the public health and the government throughout the last few weeks. I think that has absolutely helped in flattening the curve. And I think Tony Houlihan mentioned last weekend that he does believe that we are over the worst. But I suppose the worry is when restrictions are lifted, that people do still stick to the restrictions that are there. I think that's really important, and I know that Simon Harris did tweet yesterday, I think, that there's only 40 people a day attending hospital services at the moment with COVID-19, so that figure has dropped dramatically from the beginning of the month. I think there was 100 people a day being admitted, so it's staying at home has proven to work, and I suppose as hard as it is for everybody at the moment that are finding it really, really difficult. All these figures are actually they're outstanding, really, and I know the death toll is still rising, and I suppose that unfortunately a lot of those numbers are coming from nursing homes and stuff, and those more vulnerable people in those settings. But for the country as a whole, I think we've done so well, and I do believe that if we do stick with the restrictions, that we have seen the peak already.
Yeah, the toll that it's taking, as you say, on some of the most vulnerable in society is grim, and I'm sure there's going to be we'll reflect on this for quite some time once we get through it. In terms of the numbers as well, Laura, more than a quarter of confirmed coronavirus cases so far have been amongst healthcare workers. How much is that in your mind in terms of any asks that might come down the track?
Yeah, I suppose that is a scary kind of a figure, the fact that these men and women putting themselves on the front line are actually the ones that are the quite high numbers suffering with COVID-19. I suppose that is quite a scary figure for anybody working in the healthcare system and on the front line. I guess we just have to stick with the universal precautions, keep using our PPE, keep washing our hands, and let's hope that my colleagues that I know who are working on the front line inside in ICUs and stuff are safe, and that we do keep using the universal precautions and the washing of the hands. I know that's been drilled into us at the moment, but all these things do work. But I suppose it is a scary figure because all these people on the front line are coming home to friends and family or whoever they're living with, and they still have to come home each evening, and who knows who's in the household living with them. So I suppose it is quite scary for frontline workers, but I think the country as a whole has done so well, and the government and the public health, they brought in the measures, I think, compared to other countries, and they've done it tremendously, I think.
Yeah, we've spoken to a lot of frontline workers over the last couple of weeks. Noelle Healy springs to mind of a couple of weeks ago. She's an anaesthetist and ICU doctor, and obviously her training was actually very appropriate really to what's going on at the minute. But in terms of your own preparation for if or when that call comes, how appropriate is your training and expertise up to this point to swiftly moving over to a different area, or would there be much upskilling required in that?
I suppose it depends on the area that they want you to move to. So each universal precautions and the use of PPE and everything are courses that we go on really regularly. So everybody would be familiar with the use of PPE and how to take off the gloves correctly, how to take off the gown, how to take off the mask and stuff. So when it comes to that, I think I'd be quite skilled in it. Then it depends on what area that you're aligned into. So I suppose I wouldn't be entirely skilled in ICU, for instance, but you're an extra pair of hands, and you do have people around you that are experts in that area, and you're there, I guess, to help them with your extra pair of hands, and I think they'd be very thankful for that as well. So it depends on the area, I suppose, that you're put into, and it could just be an area that people are in just for overnight fluids, that they're a bit dehydrated with COVID-19, and that they're well enough to go home 24 hours later. So people like that I'd be very confident working with, but I suppose if you were thrown into the ICU setting, you would be asking for the more experienced people around you. But again, we'd be working as a team, so I think any pair of hands in those kind of settings in ICU and stuff, I think everybody would be very grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. We mentioned at the top that you're working in the colposcopy unit in St Finbarrs, and I'd read last night as well that cervical screening had been postponed for a time, I think maybe up until last weekend. I don't know the current state of play in that, but there are so many stories, I suppose, to be told after this mess is done, but that in itself is tough for a lot of women, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. So that has been paused nearly for 3 or 4 months now from the GP setting. So there will be a huge backlog now of women who are requiring smears. So at the moment in my colposcopy setting, we have about 1,000 people on a waiting list. So we're trying to get through those numbers. So at the moment, because GPs and stuff aren't taking smears, that means that we're not receiving in as many referrals. Now, obviously, we're receiving in referrals for urgent women who are being seen in the GP setting, but your standard routine smear, which would be every 3 years, people aren't having them at the moment. And I think the latest figure is that there's 300,000 women at the moment waiting to have their routine smear, and that's with only the last 2 or 3, 4 months that the whole programme has been paused for. So at the moment we are trying to clear our original waiting list, and now I guess when the whole programme has been unpaused, now these 300,000 people plus who are due their smears, we're going to get a big handful of referrals again coming back into us. So it is going to put pressure on our own colposcopy clinic alone, not to mind the whole cervical check programme once again.
Yeah, one of these offshoots, obviously, of this thing that will play out, I'm sure, over the next while as well. Laura, how are you yourself coping with everything? Obviously, the absence of any proper and full team active sport in your life. How are you managing to cope with that?
Yeah, I guess it is a difficult one. It's not a scenario that any of us have been in before, I guess, and the unknown is really difficult. I'm still trying to keep up my routine training at the moment. So I usually would have trained maybe 5 days a week. So I'm trying to stick with that at the moment and keep it to the days that I would have been training when we were all training collectively. Individual training obviously brings its own challenges. You're trying to keep your times or whatever and beat them the next week. And our managers and our strength and conditioning and hurling coaches have been fantastic. We've been in touch collectively, the bones of once a week. If it's not just for a chat, well then it might be a speaker that's going to talk to us about individual training or something. So at the moment, yeah, it's obviously really difficult, and the unknown of whether GAA and Camogie ladies football are going to be played this year at all, that's another question that is kind of thrown up into the air at the moment.
Yeah, what do you think?
It's a very difficult one. I'm hoping that we will get the opportunity to play. I think it would give a huge lift. Maybe an option for it might be to be played behind closed doors. That might be a better option. I think maybe girls, I know lads and everything, everybody is still training at the moment, so behind closed doors might be a better option than it not actually being played at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was an interesting one that's been in the headlines a lot over the last week, but you'd be perfectly comfortable playing behind closed doors?
Yeah, well, I guess we do have to obviously follow the government and the HSE and the public health guidelines. Restrictions will be lifted. Now, whether those restrictions start working or not, that's another thing. So maybe if the championship was to go ahead down in the lines of September, October, personally, I wouldn't really have a problem with that if that is the state. Obviously, we do have to keep following the guidelines that are given, and if the guidelines are that, obviously, we have heard that there are going to be no mass gatherings for people until August, I think it was, that was announced during the week. So that obviously brings its own thing with sport. But if we were allowed to meet up maybe in the next month or two in groups of 3s or 4s to be training, that will give a huge lift. And if then after that there was to be championship played in September, October, even the televisation of the games, I think, would even give a huge lift to people at home and stuff who are still sitting or still cocooning at that point. So hopefully it is played, but obviously if it's not going to be safe for the players or management or spectators that are allowed to go to it, well then obviously we have to follow those rules and regulations. So then the championship probably wouldn't go ahead.
Yeah, it's tough. Some tough calls ahead, and it'll be as tough for Cork as anybody, because the league final inside, obviously, before all this came crashing down. But I know that's not foremost in your thoughts at the minute, Laura. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. We'll speak to you again, and keep strong over the coming weeks and months. Thanks a lot.
You too. Mind yourself. Bye.
Thanks a lot. That's Laura Treacy, Cork Camogie fullback and all-star as well, and nurse at St. Finbarr's as mentioned. So you can head along if you want. We're dressed up in our formal gear this morning, myself and Owen, and we will be on Off the Ball over the course of today in support of our frontline heroes. You can head along to offtheball.com/donate, where we've a GoFundMe page up and running, and the tally continues to grow and grow. So head along there and make a donation and get dressed up in your gear as well. Why wouldn't you? Sure, look how smart we're looking this morning, and share that on social media too. So lots more to come. We're going to be chatting to Mike Carlson very shortly about the latest from the NFL draft, which got underway in Roger Goodell's basement last night. But before that, the O'Donovan brothers in conversation with Nathan on last night's show.
Yeah, not really keep going the way we were going. Like, the way we were going was pretty insane. It was very, very full on, the training. The program was very regimented. It was intense. It was just hard. Like, we were coming to the end of the road for the Olympiad, and you were really giving it socks. But I guess, we definitely won't be coming to a stop or taking any time off. I mean, if we, it sounds nice to be like, oh yeah, it's been postponed a year, we'll take some time off. But every time you take off is negative progress. Like, after a couple of weeks, you'll start getting unfit, and we're very, very fit because we had been training so hard all year up until now. And it'd be an awful shame to lose that work and let it go to waste. So it's kind of like, yeah, we're not training as hard. We've taken our foot off the gas a bit, but we want to try and maintain what fitness we have and what effort we've made so far. We don't want to let that go to waste, and try and keep that work in the tank, and hopefully it'll stand to us coming into next season when things start kicking off again.
You can check out that full interview with the O'Donovan brothers up on offtheball.com. Nathan with a longer conversation with the two lads last night. Now, the draft got underway last night, the NFL draft. Mike Carlson joins us on the line. Good morning to you, Mike.
Good morning. How are you doing? Did you stay up to watch?
Did not stay up to watch. I have to tell you, I watched Roger Goodell's tour of his basement yesterday, and I wondered to myself, there was a lot of gear in there, a lot of lighting, minimal staff, obviously, given the restrictions that are in place. But I did wonder, how the hell is this thing going to look? It does not look like a good setup, but bloody hell, they took the hinges off. It looked brilliant.
Yeah, it was kind of like your grandfather's draft, and you kept waiting for someone to say, "Hang on, how does this work? Is that on Zoom or what?" But the thing I wanted from Roger Goodell was to have his kids come into the room and start booing him when he announced the picks. It would have been absolutely perfect. I didn't hang around because I got some sleep instead, because it actually turned out to be a very predictable draft, especially at the top, which was kind of the way we looked at it, because you had a sort of elite group of players plus quarterbacks, which meant that those almost all the first 10 picks were pretty much as you thought they would go. And from that point on, teams were going for people they liked. There were only a few trades. New England predictably, very predictably, traded out of the first round, because at this point they saw that they could probably get somebody they liked just as well, and pick up more picks. And I thought the Chargers, had a great deal getting Kenneth Murray, the linebacker, with that New England pick, on top of Justin Herbert, their first round pick. But things worked out pretty much as planned. I think the Raiders were really the team that surprised the most with their picks, and I think Minnesota did very well. Jacksonville surprisingly did very well. I've just noticed that Ian has got his bow tie on. I'm very pleased he dressed up for the event.
It's formal Friday, Mike, but I'm just dressed up because I want to feel like I'm Roger Goodell and hosting the draft myself, to be quite honest with you. The Jacksonville stuff was interesting. I'm not sure, did you see CJ Henderson when it panned to him and he had his face in his hands as if the Jacksonville is the last place he wanted to end up in this particular draft. It was obviously Joe Burrow out of LSU who went first in the draft, going to Cincinnati. Talk to us about Joe Burrow and what we can expect from him.
I like Joe Burrow a lot, and you know what happens in drafts is that up till about the combine, everybody talks about what a player has done during the season and in postseason and how he looks on tape, and then after the combine, they spend the rest of the time picking him apart. And the pick aparts on Joe Burrow were basically he doesn't have the strongest arm in the draft, and he's a one-year wonder in a sense. He started his career at Ohio State. He couldn't get the starting job. He transferred to LSU and had a good but not great first year and a great second year. But when you look at him, you see accuracy, you see the ability to hold in the pocket, you see the ability to make plays on the run. You can't argue with the season he had. And from a Bengals point of view, since they're one of the cheaper franchises in the league, they really needed, I think, at this point, to take a quarterback of the future. Whether they keep Andy Dalton or not, which I would say not. You know, this will keep their salary cap under control, allow them to get a few more good players, and I think Burrow can step right in and start on day one, which I don't think you could say about any of the other first round quarterbacks, the four of them. The other interesting thing in the draft too is that more than half of the draft came from three positions. Right. There were 6 tackles, there were 6 wide receivers, and there were 6 cornerbacks taken in the first round.
Right, that's interesting. Just to focus and keep our focus on the quarterbacks for a moment, the big talking point coming up to the draft was about where Tua was going to end up. He's going to be a Miami Dolphin. Does the fact that the NFL season perhaps maybe not starting at its usual time, does that lessen the risk of Tua, or is it still a high risk enough strategy by Miami to take him? Like my personal theory is that surely with all the money in the league, there might have been some sort of covert operation to actually test Tua out privately. You know, maybe keeping their social distance, maybe perhaps flouting the rules a little bit and keeping all whatever they were doing under wraps. But it seems that perhaps this might have been too big a risk for them to take without actually getting the full information.
Yeah, I think they got information from his doctors, but you never really trust what you get from the players or agents' own sources. And I heard yesterday, interesting, Tua's never had a 40 time. You know, nobody knows how. Now, for quarterbacks, I don't care about a 40 time particularly. You know, Tom Brady ran his 40 in about the same time he would run it now at age 43. But the thing with Tua and with Herbert, as they got picked apart, and obviously size, injury worries are the main downers with Tua. If you went off his tape before he hurt his hip, he's a first pick in this draft. So Miami's got a quarterback in place for this season if they want to, in Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Chargers have a quarterback in place for this season, Tyrod Taylor. They're both journeymen, basically, but they can get you through a season or part of a season, which will give them time, whether or not the season starts on time. They were already going to get time to bring the quarterback along slowly. And in the modern, we feel a lot of pressure for these guys drafted highly to start. But the reality is, with the money they're paying them, they shouldn't rush them into starting if they're not ready. And, you know, I would expect that if Tua's fully healthy, we see him before the season's over. I would expect if Herbert's fully healthy, we see him before the season's over. But I don't think either team will feel a rush to put them in as the starter right now, whereas Joe Burrow's going to move right in as a starter, we assume.
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest shocks from, I think, the first round was Jordan Love getting picked by the Green Bay Packers. What does this mean for Aaron Rodgers? Is this a long-term replacement, or is there something here that we don't know? Because this seems like one of the more shocking and probably worst decisions that we've seen already in this year's draft.
It's funny. Love was all over the place in drafts, you know, and some people really love him, and some, no pun intended, and some didn't. And he's a guy who needs work. And to me, I always these things ring a bell in the back of my head. Love was picked in almost the same position that Aaron Rodgers was picked by Green Bay when they had Brett Favre at quarterback, and Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. I think they're thinking pretty much the same thing at this point. They could trade into a position where they could get a guy they thought was a first-round talent and a long-term solution, and he's got a ton of natural ability, which in his junior year he showed. His senior year, you can make you can make arguments that the team around him wasn't changes hurt him. So he's a guy they can develop. There won't be a rush to push Aaron Rodgers out of town. Again, for the same reason, they've got him for 5 years at reasonable prices. They can take their time with him, but it gives them a backup that they might not be in position to get in the next draft or the draft after that, should Rodgers, who also has an injury history, collarbone in particular, and who is getting old, should Rodgers either not be able to play or decide he doesn't want to play anymore.
All right, Mike, we will pick this up with you again, no doubt. Thanks, Millie, for taking the call this morning.
Anytime. They're going for 2 more days.
Yeah, listen, there's lots more to get stuck into here. We will be back to you again, no doubt about it.
Okay,
crank
thanks,
up that
guys.
sleep and we'll pick it up with you again. Thanks a lot. Mike Carlson on the line there, reflecting on the opening night of the NFL draft. Did you saw the basement, Owen, obviously?
And obviously he's probably the least likable sports administrator in the world, but I did like the touch of putting the screen on and everybody was booing Roger Goodell. I thought that was very funny.
Right, we are very excited to say that Simon Zebos are going to be our next guest on the OTB Kids Takeover. First off, we give you and your kids the chance to grill Brian O'Driscoll on anything it was that you wanted. And then Lee Keegan put himself to the test. So they have been done. And up next, if you have any questions for Simon Zebo, you can send us WhatsApp video in landscape mode. So make sure it's in landscape mode and send it over to us. Or you can send a message as well if you're not into the video. 087 9180 180, and we'll put the best questions to Simon. So that's upcoming after the break, though. It's what you've all been waiting for this morning. Mount Rushmore, Donegal.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
So I know the likes of Griezmann's big into his fashion.
You wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998. If you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and it is instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio.
OTB AM.
You're welcome along to Bar Wars. This is a very special formal Friday edition of Bar Wars. As you can see, dressed up to the nines. Basically haven't been this dressed up for anything since I took Burton Albion to the League 2 playoff final in Football Manager 2013. Loads of people getting in touch about last week's Bar Wars, where we put the Penguin Bar up against the Jaffa Cake. Penguin Bar obviously won. A few of you getting in touch saying the Jaffa Cake deserved to win. Now, I respect your opinion completely, but I should say that your opinion is wrong and completely worthless. So as we all know, bars are for plebs. If I'm wearing a 3-piece suit, I'm going to eat a biscuit rather than a bar. Today, we're putting the Viscount Classy Biscuit up against another classy biscuit, the Elite Chocolate Kimberley. So we're going to give both of these biscuits a score out of 100 and then determine the winner at the end. So we'll start with this Viscount to some of you, but to me, an intellectual Viscount. Like, if this biscuit was an emoji, it would be the clapping emoji. Just pure and utter class. Chocolate, touch of class. Mint, touch of class. Biscuit, touch of class. It's a great biscuit. It's really, really strong. There's nothing overly bad you can say about the Viscount. Anybody who claims about mint just can't handle the fact that their airways are being opened up by the beauty of mint. And anyone who doesn't appreciate it probably just isn't wearing a suit. Gonna give this a 78% score. We've got the Elite Chocolate Kimberley. Again, figuring out whether or not this is an elite biscuit, there is a fairly large hint on the front of this packaging. And if you can't read, all you got to do is look at the font in which the word elite is actually written, because it looks elite. It also says elite, but it looks elite as well. So what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 3 layers of packaging in the Viscount. You know, terrible for the environment, obviously. And here we've got another triple threat. Again, packaging within the packaging within the packaging. Cardboard here, perhaps a little bit better than the plastic over there. Do we care about the planet at the moment? So, Elite Chocolate Kimberley. Yeah, yes, absolutely. I am So happy I dressed up for this. Why anybody would enjoy a regular Kimberley without the chocolate on top of it, I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me. It's so soft. It's like a pillow. It's like an edible pillow. Like, I feel like I want to go play a game of croquet after eating those. Truly elite. Like, I mean, it's like Ronseal. It absolutely is what it says in the tin. I feel like I belong in the royal family, or I feel like I'm a baron after eating that. It's sensational. I think for the feel-good factor alone of the Elite Chocolate Kimberley by Jacobs, I'm going to have to give that a score of 84%, which I think might be our highest score of the season so far, which is remarkable, really, and it's testament to just how elite I feel right now. 84%. So that's your formal Friday bar wars. Go and donate. Go and put on a suit and eat some biscuits that have italics on the front of them and donate.
Look up on Patrick's Hill. Who would you take down? Who would you take down?
OTB AM's Mount Rushmore.
Yes. OTB AM's Mount Rushmore. We've had Mayo, Offaly, Cork, Wexford, all in the books. Some have been shambolic and been overturned. Some have just been shambolic and somehow still stand. But now it's the turn of Donegal, and the debate on this one has been ablaze online over the last few days. And we have a couple of people who are going to make the calls on them. First up, off the balls, Enda Coll. Good morning to you, Owen. Enda.
Adrian, how are you?
All good. You haven't managed to hold your nerve here, Enda, in a way like any good Donegal goalkeeper would have done. You've flip-flopped on your decisions.
I've changed it about 10 times. And it's not even just been on that Shea and Boner decision. It's been on multiple decisions across the entire selection. Tommy Rooney will tell you that my first selection looks nothing like my actual selection. So that's how hard I've thought about it. That's the way I'm thinking about it.
Is there going to be a fifth sculpture done on the mountain, which is just a question mark?
Well, you see, we have plenty of hills, so I mean, it doesn't have to be 4. We can have more than one Mount Rushmore.
No, it does need to be 4, and we're going to absolutely hold you to that. And I really hope that you can sell this one to our audience, because the major debate, right, has been, obviously there are others, but the major debate will be joined by Kieran Cunningham of the Irish Daily Star, another Donegal native. You should also outline to us if there are any sort of parochial, as can happen, it turns out already, with these Mount Rushmores, parochial biases from one or the other in relation to certain picks. But the biggest one has been around the battle between Shea Given and Packy Boner in the vernacular. One of the toughest calls, I would say, of any county. Given arguably a better keeper, obviously, and after that you're into grey areas about iconism and popularity. So who are you going to go for and sell it to us?
Well, you see, I've split it up into categories to make it easier for myself. So I've made this decision based on, number 1, achievement, number 2, standard of that achievement, number 3, impact overall, and number 4, esteem held in the county. So obviously, if you're looking at this from a standpoint of sport, Olympic medals, Olympic standard, that's the highest standard of sport you can get. So that's the standard, but not necessarily, that doesn't mean you'd have the same impact in the county or you're held to the same esteem. So my first selection for this one is Michael Murphy. GAA, Donegal's a GAA first county. So Michael Murphy definitely is number 1 on that list.
Yeah, inarguably the greatest Donegal footballer of all time. It's the one name that's come up across all these selections that we've seen come through.
Well, you see, we saw Christy Ring and Nicky Rackard make the list for other counties in this so far. Michael Murphy will be Donegal's Nicky Rackard or Christy Ring in 100 years' time. People will talk about the mistake of Michael Murphy and how good he was. When Michael Murphy first started for Donegal, they had 5 Ulster titles and they had 1 All-Ireland. And he's still playing. They now have 10 Ulster titles and 2 All-Irelands, been to an All-Ireland final as well on top of that. He is an absolute mountain of a man. And what's interesting about this, and I actually thought when we started this off, that when I made the list, people would assume that there'd be GAA bias, and Michael Murphy might actually be debated as whether he deserved to be there any more than some of the players from 1992 or even the 2012 squad. But really, everybody who replied to that message, to me firstly, and to Kieran as well, Michael Murphy was the first man on the list.
Well, like, it's inarguable. Absolutely, he deserves to be there, no question. And I'd agree with you, probably first name on the list. It would have been very interesting, the conversation, had they not won in 2012. Would he make it if he didn't have an All-Ireland medal, for example?
It's a hard one to think. I don't think one way you can look at it is that I don't think Donegal would have won the All-Ireland without Michael Murphy. So it's either would he have made the list if they didn't win the All-Ireland? I think he probably would still make that list, because Donegal, for me, I hadn't been to Croke Park for a big Donegal match until Michael Murphy came into that squad. And when you think about some of the players that were on that team, so you had like Carl Lacey, Eamon McGee, Neil McGee, Neil Gallagher, Colin McFadden. There are so many players in that squad that have been in the Donegal squad for so long and were already stalwarts in this team. And Michael Murphy came in at the age of 21 and was the captain straight away. And nobody questioned it at all, because he had built up such a reputation at under 21 level for bringing Donegal to an All-Ireland final that he was already the leader of that. The younger players in the squad, they're coming onto the senior team. But he also gained the respect of the senior players very, very quickly as well, because he was such an animal when you look at him. And especially in 2011, first of all, he was kind of a little bit, he wasn't quite bulky enough. 2012, he was an absolute machine. In athletic form, his physique was perfect. He was strong, he was fast, he was agile. And of course, you can't take away from the fact that he scored the opening goal in the All-Ireland final as well. That will go down in history as one of the best goals in Donegal's.
Yeah, so let's not spend any more time talking about Michael Murphy, because it's not really up for debate. But the only other question I'd have in relation to his inclusion is about 2012 and how much of that success was wrapped up with Michael Murphy and how much of it was wrapped up with Jim McGuinness.
Right. So he wasn't going to be my second selection. I was going to wait and hold on. But Jim McGuinness is actually my second man on Mount Rushmore as well.
Right. Go on, explain yourself.
So obviously Michael Murphy played a big role. He absolutely did. But if you look, and again, I named some of those players. So you have Carl Lacey, who was an All-Star winner before Donegal got any good at football. You had Eamon McGee, Neil McGee, Frank McGlynn, I already named Carl Lacey, sorry. Colm Anthony McFadden, who was the top scorer in the championship that year. Michael Murphy. So when I was making out this list, I was like, was this down to Jim McGuinness, or was this down to the exceptionally talented players that he had at his disposal? I think it was down a lot of credit has to go to Jim McGuinness here, because Donegal always had talented players. They always had players who could do it. Like I said, Carl Lacey had won an All-Star in 2007 when Donegal, they won the National League, but they weren't going to win the All-Ireland Championship. They weren't even winning Ulsters. So Donegal, Jim McGuinness was able to bring these players together and bring some discipline to the situation, and actually tell these players they are good enough to go on and do something. And most importantly, he came up with a game plan as well to help that team become an absolute unstoppable force.
One of the other toughest calls around this, and we'll get to Packy Bonner and Shay Given, don't worry about it in just a minute. I think that, Enda, you've backed out of making a tough call here, because I think that I'm not sure about Jim McGuinness on this list. Brian McAniff hasn't come up in conversation just yet, and I'm sure Kieran Cunningham might make a play for him a bit later on. But he broke the mould in winning in '92. It had obviously never been done before. He was a guy who was player-manager for Donegal's first ever Ulster win as well. He won countless Railway Cups when Railway Cups were a thing. Like Jim did the Jim Gavin thing, right, of winning it as a player and a manager. But in the anthology of Donegal greats and how the story of Donegal GAA is told, you can't, I don't believe, look past Brian McAniff.
I disagree with you, but go on, Enda.
All right, well, the argument for Brian McAniff is a very valid one as well, because he's the godfather of Donegal GAA. And I mentioned Michael Murphy and Donegal before Michael Murphy and Donegal after Michael Murphy. Donegal had never won anything before Brian McAniff, as a player and as a manager. So of the 1 All-Ireland and 5 Ulster titles Donegal had before 2012, Brian McAniff was involved in every single one of them, be that as a player or a manager. He's the only man I know that was on and off as a manager for 25 years in county football. I'm not sure. Somebody might have done it elsewhere that I might not know of. But
5 different stints, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so it was spread out across the. So he just had this amazing dedication to Donegal GAA, and players like Eamon McGee, Neil McGee, they credit Brian McAniff for a lot of their career as well. So you have to give him. He definitely has to be considered. But I think what Jim McGuinness did, and this is where my categories come in, the impact that he had on the overall sport of GAA makes Jim McGuinness trumps Jim McGuinness ahead of Brian McAniff, because GAA as a whole, as a sport, has changed completely because of Jim McGuinness.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, and I think that it kind of goes along with what you're saying about Michael Murphy being remembered as a legend in 100 years' time. McGuinness will be remembered as a bigger legend than anybody else in Donegal football, especially when it comes to management in 100 years down the line, with the exception of Michael Murphy himself. So I think it's an arguable. I think.
Yeah, but we're not talking about who changed the game. We're talking about who changed Donegal, and for me, Brian McAniff is that man. Kieran Cunningham is on the line. Kieran, I don't know how much of that conversation you've been picking up on. Where do you stand, Brian McAniff versus Jim McGuinness?
Yeah, I the call dropped for a second, so I missed a little bit of it, but I got the gist. I wouldn't have Jim McGuinness on it. No, if it's a choice between Jim McGuinness and Brian McAniff, it's no contest. But you have to look, when you're doing something like this, you have to look at the history of the county and sport within the county. Donegal never won an Ulster title in 1972. That's how late it was. They never actually got to an Ulster final in 1963. So up till Jim McGuinness took over, they'd won 5 Ulster titles in their history, and Brian McAniff was manager or playing manager for every single of those. One of those. He also won their first All-Ireland, and he also was a brilliant footballer. He was an All-Star as a player, and he also, funny enough as well, he also played League of Ireland soccer under a pseudonym, because the ban was on at the time. So he played for a couple of clubs under assumed names. Jim McGuinness never had that playing career. Like you mentioned that he was an All-Ireland winner as a player, but he was an unused sub. He was a squad player. Like he was way down the list. He was still a teenager in 1992, and his playing career was unfulfilled to a fair extent. Like he was really good at figures, and but championship football, it never really worked for him. Like he never got an All-Star nominee, let alone an All-Star. So I don't think anyone could say he was an outstanding footballer. And that breakthrough, like you have to look at where Ulster football was. Donegal were never poor. Like it was overstated how bad Donegal were before Jim McGuinness took over. Because in the noughties, the 3 best Ulster teams of all time were down in the 60s, Armagh, Tyrone in the noughties. The teams that kept beating Donegal in the noughties were Armagh, Tyrone. So Armagh, Tyrone started to dip. Like it was a perfect storm in a way when Jim McGuinness came in. He did improve them dramatically. He had the right players coming on stream at the right time and at the right age profile. But it helped that the 2 big powers had dipped. And also, if you look at Michael Murphy, I think Michael Murphy was the most significant figure. Michael Murphy effectively has been joint manager of Donegal for 10 years under Jim McGuinness, Rory Gallagher and Declan Bonner. That he has a huge say in what goes on. The players hang on his every word. He's been captain for 10 years, which is unprecedented. Like in, most counties, the captaincy changes every 2 or 3 years, and he's not captaincy in name only. He has a massive say in what happens. He even sponsors the Donegal Club Championships. That's how pivotal a figure he is. And this is not down to downplay what Jim McGuinness has done, but I think recency bias comes into play. And I think having 2 for the last decade is too much. Like Karl Lacey was Footballer of the Year as well. He actually had 2 All-Stars before Jim McGuinness came in. Like Karl Lacey's a strong claim. But Brian McAniff and Martin McHugh, you can't forget Martin McHugh, how surprised hasn't been mentioned much in this. Martin McHugh was one of the best players in Ireland for a decade. For most of the 80s and the early 90s. He was Footballer of the Year in 1992. He won 2 All-Stars, 83 and 92. For 5 years in the 80s, Donegal didn't win a championship game. But for much of that decade, he was still the leading scorer in the country. He was very prolific. And he was also very similar to Peter Canavan in that he was a corner forward who also played centre forward. If you look back at the clips now of those games, a lot of them don't stand up to close scrutiny now. The players you thought were great, now you're looking at they were a bit crude in their style, but he was a stylist. Like he wouldn't have been out of place in a Kerry jersey or a Down jersey or a Dublin jersey. And those 2, I think McHugh had a huge say in Donegal's success under Brian McAniff, and those 2 shouldn't be forgotten. I think it would be too much to both Murphy and McGuinness. I think you have to look at a McHugh and McAniff in there as well.
Yeah. But I think, so just for clarity, people who are just joining us, Enda is going to pick his 4 Donegal Mt Rushmore selections, and then at the end, then Kieran is going to get the opportunity to swap one of those out. And so far, he's made the calls. And Michael Murphy, that I think is pretty much inarguable, and then Jim McGuinness, and then you still have the opportunity to do the right thing and get Jim off that before you get to your final 4. But like that'll ultimately be your call. So let's see how we work through this. You're not tempted, you're not swayed by anything you've heard so far to swap Jim out there?
No, I don't think so. And I know, Kieran, I take Kieran's points in the terms of there might be a little bit of recency bias, but that recency bias is more off. There is a certain generation, which is my generation, that the biggest sporting moment of their career came, or of not of their career, of their life came under Jim McGuinness's reign. I had never been to a big match in Croke Park before Jim McGuinness took over Donegal. The first game I was in Croke Park was a game against Armagh in an Ulster game. For some reason, Ulster was taking place in Croke Park that year, and Donegal got destroyed. And I just thought, I was young enough at this stage, and I thought, this is what being a Donegal supporter is all about. This is what it's like. And then I don't think we can downplay that Ulster title in 2011. That was the first Ulster title Donegal had won in over 20 years. I mean, it was unbelievably big. And there's a great image of me. I think I can fish it out. I'll put it on Twitter later on, of me running onto the pitch and rugby tackling Patrick McBrearty on the Clonus pitch, because I was the perfect age for this to happen. It was the culmination of an unbelievable Donegal team. They won their first title. It was brilliant. I never thought that moment would come. And then 2012, they build on that again and won the All-Ireland final. I was told to calm down by a fellow Donegal person in the hill when Michael Murphy stuck the ball into the net. That's how big a moment that was. And for a certain generation, yes, the 92 team, Brian McAniff, Martin McHugh, they are the players that you will look up to. But this 2012 team, they're the exact same for my generation. So that's why Jim McGuinness.
But you have to say, and they got it. You know, Michael Murphy will talk. They will all talk about the inspiration they took from '92, and you have to go back. Donegal had never been in an All-Ireland final before '92. You know, that was the big groundbreaking one, as was '72 winning Ulster. Obviously, it's huge what happened in the past decade for people of your generation, but it was unthinkable. Like up till the late '80s, Donegal had never been higher in the league than Division 3. They were always a Division 3 or Division 4 team. So that was over 100, the first 100 years of GAA's history. Donegal was seen as akin to a Carlow or a Longford for much of their history. And
also it's important to say as well that obviously this is Donegal's Mount Rushmore, and the responsibility is with you to bear the weight of your county, not just your own experience. Don't fall down that Nathan Murphy trap of not including somebody who really should be on your county's Mount Rushmore. So it's the weight of your county, not just your own experience. You need to bear that in mind as we work our way through here, and you can give it some consideration. We will get your final 4 from you before we wrap up. But let's move on from this particular element of the conversation now to your third pick for Donegal's Mount Rushmore.
Right. Number 3, Shay Given. He definitely deserved to be here. He played at an unbelievably high standard, first of all. He played at a couple of major tournaments for Ireland. He had a brilliant impact as well as a player. Like, it wasn't as if he was just another player in that Newcastle team. He won multiple individual honours when he was playing for Newcastle, and he's held to a very, very high esteem in Donegal as well. So Shay Given is my number 3 pick. I think he's an automatic selection in this team, hands down. I know, again, we're looking at a generational thing. Packy Boner will definitely be someone who, from a certain age point, means the world to them because it's the biggest sporting moment, probably one of the biggest sporting moments in Irish football history. But for me, Shay Given is absolutely a dead cert on this Mount Rushmore for Donegal. He's probably played at the highest standard of any Donegal sports person when we're talking relative sports. So football, if you're talking about a footballer, nobody played at a higher standard than Shay Given.
So that means Packy Boner doesn't make the cut, right?
I didn't say that.
What have you got for us, Enda? Come on.
Right. So, number 4 is a tough one. This is a tough one. This is where I changed my mind a couple of times, because my original list I said Packy Bonner straight away. That was my first choice. And then I changed my mind. I was like, oh, what about the mistakes that he made in USA in '84, you know? But Packy Bonner has to be there. He can't not be there. So I'm going with two goalkeepers. I'll go with both of them. Shay Given, Packy Bonner. They're my last two selections on the list.
Kieran?
He bottled it, didn't he?
What do you think?
Carl Enda, he bottled it. Didn't want it. There's too much. Didn't want to fall out with anybody. No, well, I'll just explain the Packy one because there's amazing amount of debate about it, and it really, a lot of it is dependent on your generation. But I think you have to go back further. You have to look at the character of the county. And if you're talking about Mount Rushmore and what the county represents and what these people would represent to the county, Donegal is a very distinctive county for many reasons. One of the reasons is, for a rural county, like outside of the counties with a big city, soccer generally isn't that strong. But soccer is a really strong tradition in Donegal. And it goes back to the kind of patterns of migration with Scotland. But generally, Donegal people live to Glasgow rather than to Dublin or to Belfast. Like, they were as familiar with Glasgow as they would have been with Dublin, more familiar. Like, going back, Patrick McGill, who would be known for the McGill Summer School, he wrote a book called Children of the Dead End. And it's about those labourers who went over to Scotland for tatey hoke, as they were called. It was for the potato harvest. And it was effectively slave labour. They were paid very little. They stayed in these camps in pretty brutal conditions. And a lot of those people put down roots there. Like, the seven Glasgow-born footballers have played international football for Ireland. All seven have Donegal roots. You know, that's how strong the connection is. And rooted in that is the connection with Celtic Football Club. The first sod laid on the Parkhead pitch was taken over in a ferry from West Donegal, because that's how strong those links were. So when you talk about Donegal people's pride in having the Ireland goalkeeper in Packy Bonner, there was also a huge amount of pride in having the Celtic goalkeeper. That was massive in Donegal, because Celtic have always been huge there. And he played in an era when Celtic were very strong and when the Scottish League was very strong. Aberdeen went to European Cup Winners' Cup final during that era and beat Real Madrid in the final. Dundee United went to the UEFA Cup final, beating Barcelona and Borussia Mönchengladbach along the way. They went to the European Cup semi-final in '84 and only lost to Rome over 2 legs by 1 goal. So it wasn't just about Celtic and Rangers then. He played over 600 times for Celtic. He is seen as a Celtic icon. So for that reason alone, if he hadn't done anything for Ireland, he would be revered in Donegal. Then when you look at Ireland, it's not just about Genoa. People just think it was just a penalty save. Ireland, the 3 most significant games Ireland ever played in international football were against England in '88, Romania in 1990, and Italy in 1994. Goalkeeper for all 3, kept clean sheets in all 3. He got Man of the Match award against England, Ireland's first ever game in an international tournament. He saved the penalty in Genoa, and he kept out Italy with Baggio, etc., a team who ended up in the World Cup final in '94. Of course, he made mistakes. He had a bad mistake against Holland when Ireland were knocked out in 1994. He arguably shouldn't have been at the team for that tournament because he was in decline, and Alan Kelly should have been in. But Shay Given made mistakes before as well. Like, I'm not sure which of them is the better keeper. I have a lot of respect for Shay Given. I think he was outstanding for a long time. The people saying he was world class.
Kieran, you'd have to accept that Shay Given, if it comes to a quality conversation, having played at a superior league over a longer period of time, was in consideration for some of the top clubs.
Hold on.
He's in a world class conversation with Packy Bonner wasn't.
No, hold on, Adrian. Manchester United, after Schmeichel, Manchester United went through goalkeepers at a rate of knots. I think they went through 14 goalkeepers up until they got Edwin van der Sar. Some of them only played a few games. The likes of Roy Carroll played, Taibbi, like a lot of really poor goalkeepers. They scouted Shay Given for a long time. Both Alex Ferguson and Tony Coton, the goalkeeping coach, went and watched him several times, and they both agreed he's not the level we need. And part of that,
they probably made a mistake. Kieran, is the thing. You talk about Roy Carroll, like he's.
Hold on.
He's clearly a better keeper than some of those names you mentioned there.
Absolutely, he's better there. Of course he is. But they wanted somebody like Van der Sar, who significantly is much taller and bigger than Shay Given, and that actually went against Shay Given, because whether you believe depending on what you believe, he's either 6 foot or 6'1", and he started playing in an era where the average height of Premier League keepers was 6'3". I think that went against him getting the top clubs. Like saying the Premier League, the level he played at was miles better than what Bonner played at. I don't know if you can say that, because in Newcastle United were akin to Wolves now. They could be very good on their day, but they were okay. They were a good enough team. They weren't great by any means. He went through a long career, and I'm not saying he wasn't a good goalkeeper. He was an outstanding goalkeeper. To me, he's probably Ireland's best goalkeeper. But I think he's been used as a stick to beat down Paddy Bonner, who had a really good career. He made a couple of mistakes, as Shay Given did, as every goalkeeper did. There's a famous clip of Dion Dublin making a fool out of Shay Given. Every goalkeeper makes mistakes. And also, I think the way both men's careers ended was poor, in that USA 94, it should have been Alan Kelly instead of Paddy Bonner. At Euro 2012, Shay Given, to me, was nowhere near fit. He hardly trained. There was a lot of talk about around it. And Trapattoni should have made the call, or Shay Given should have made the call himself. And also then, after he retired, he came out of retirement at a time he wasn't playing club football, and he was put back in the Ireland team. And I thought that left a sour taste. Overall, he was in huge credit, but he was consistent. There's a big difference in he was very, very consistent. But he doesn't have those wild games that you think about immediately with Paddy Bonner, like the England game, like what he did against Romania. And I think Paddy Bonner, because he sums up that link between the west of Scotland and Donegal, has to be on this. Shay Given is a very strong claim as well. But I think we'll come to this in a minute. I think the Donegal sporting tradition is so broad, I'm reluctant of two people. Like, you're ending up with just GA and soccer, the way we're going, and I think that would be wrong.
Yeah. Well, look, hold that thought for a second, Kieran. We're going to come back to you in a minute. And so far, with Michael Murphy, with Jim McGuinness, with Shay Given, and with Paddy Bonner, which looks like Enda's final four. But time for a new element on the OTB Mt Rushmore. We're adding it to the mix. It's the last pitch, the last play, and there's a lot on the line here for the county of Donegal. Tommy Martin, another proud son of the county of Virgin Media Sport, has weighed in with his own thoughts.
Hello, Tommy Martin here, throwing my tuppence worth in for the great Donegal sporting Mount Rushmore debate. First of all, could I ask that this particular Mount Rushmore be supersized somewhat? For how can our great sporting heritage as a county be narrowed down to just 4 iconic figures? Failing that, allow me to make the case for a man about whose inclusion I thought there would be absolutely no doubt. Alas, I have noted in recent days an element of Paddy Bonner revisionism creeping into the discussion, which I would like to ruthlessly crush right here. Sure, Shay Given was technically a better goalkeeper, and Paddy made mistakes in World Cup games against Italy in 1990 and against the Netherlands in 1994. Firstly, though, only the 1991 should be held against him. The mistake against the Dutch in 94 had little bearing on the ultimate result, in my view. Holding it against Paddy would be like questioning the legacy of Julius Caesar because the Roman Empire eventually fell. The fact that Paddy was responsible for the greatest moment in the history of Irish sport should guarantee his inclusion in this particular pantheon without a doubt. The penalty save against Romania, a nation holding its breath, that grey goalkeeper jersey with the shiny flecks, the must-have fashion item for kids that summer, a homecoming for our Ross's hero. I remember shaking the giant hand that sent a nation into ecstasy. But this is not a personal reflection. This is a tribute to a man who helped give us some of our greatest days as a nation. His best game for Ireland, that miraculous afternoon in '88 when he denied Lineker, Hoddle, Beardsley and the rest. Without Paddy, there would be no Joxer Goes to Stuttgart. Would the greatest adventure of Irish sporting history have been stopped in its tracks? Paddy was, and I say this only slightly flippantly, Ireland's main playmaker back then. 2 of our most important goals, Sheedy against England and Quinn against the Dutch, began with intercontinental ballistic kickouts from Paddy. Most importantly, there is the fact that some legacies are above revisionism, some achievements too shining, too joyful, too glorious to be subjected to the nitpicking deconstruction of us mere mortals. The Charlton years are among those, and Paddy was one of the leading men. For what it's worth, my Donegal Rushmore is Paddy, Brian McAniff, Michael Murphy and one of these two. I can't decide. but thankfully I don't have to. I don't envy you chaps. Enjoy.
Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff there from Tommy Martin of Virgin Media Sport with his picks on who he thinks should be up there. So to recap, Enda's 4 and where we're at, Michael Murphy, Jim McGuinness, Shay Given and Paddy Boner are Enda's picks for the 4 that should be on the Donegal Mt Rushmore. Kieran, we're going to get to your one change in just a minute. But before that, any other names that are worthy of mention in the mix here?
Myself,
me, Adrian?
For Kieran, yeah.
For Kieran, well, there's tons. Like there's a few. I'll run through them as quick as I can, Adrian. Like Dave Gallagher was the main. He's the legendary All Blacks captain and basically created. He's given a lot of credit for creating the All Blacks myth and creating everything that the All Blacks eventually became. And Patsy Gallagher was a Celtic great in the first part of the 20th century. He's still regarded as one of the all-time best players. The caveat I would make with both of them emigrated when they were 3-4 years old. So you could say they're products of Scotland or New Zealand as much as Donegal. So for that reason, I would leave them out. Patsy McGonigal, there's a very strong athletics tradition and Olympic tradition in Donegal. And Patsy McGonigal has a lot to do with that, what he'd done with Finn Valley. And he ended up being manager of Ireland teams at the Olympics. Danny McDade, who was a 2-time Olympian in the marathon, had a lot to do with it. And... there's tons of others like the League of Ireland, Patsy McGowan winning the FAI Cup with Finn Harps, like Kevin McHugh, what he's done with his goal scoring exploits in recent years. There's a great rallying tradition. You can throw in quite a few names for rallying tradition. Only one Irish woman has gone to 4 Olympic Games. Chloe McGee has gone to 3 in badminton. And she's well placed to go to 4th in Tokyo. Somebody like Chloe shouldn't be forgotten either. To me, the one outstanding one that we haven't mentioned and that I will be putting on and taking out one of Enda's choices is Sinead Jennings, or Sinead Lynch as she's now known. So she's married to Sam Lynch. Because Sinead, there's only one world champion from Donegal. I'm open to correction that, but as far as I know, that's the case. Sinead Jennings was a world champion in rowing, but her career wasn't just about rowing. She represented Ireland in triathlon, in cycling, and she came very close to going to the 2012 Olympics in track cycling. And she was very unlucky in that she won her world title in rowing in 2001, but it wasn't in an Olympic class boat. So she wanted to go in the doubles boat, but Irish rowing could never find a partner that was as good as her. So she kind of missed out in 04 and 08 because of that. Like, she was always good enough, but they couldn't get a good enough partner. She got one in 2016 in Clare Lamb and eventually went to the Olympics. And they ended up going to the Olympic rowing final. They finished 6th at the Olympics. And Sinead Jennings at the time was a couple of months short of her 40th birthday. She had 3 kids, and she's a doctor. She's a GP. To do that at that age, and after all she'd gone through, was incredible. Better still, she came home from Tokyo. The Olympics finished on the Sunday. She came home on the Monday or the Tuesday. They had a reception for the Wednesday. The following weekend, the Donegal Half Marathon Championships was on, a road race. She won it. Like, you have to... World champions in any sport have to be respected because they're so rare in the history of our sport. To me, she has to be on there. She has to be there.
There's been a couple of omissions that haven't been mentioned, and we should mention them before we look to wrap up, Enda, with your final thoughts to give us your firm final 4. Nora Stapleton, I think one of those 50 Ireland caps, 3 World Cups, won 2 Six Nations, a trophy winner as well at national level in both soccer and Gaelic football. Definitely worth a mention in this conversation. And Seamus Coleman, lads, has not even come up for conversation yet. Enda, you better nail on your... What's
Listen, Seamus Coleman, for me, in a few years' time, we might discuss this list, and he could be there because he'll have.
That's the ultimate cop out, Enda. That's what everybody's using as a cop out.
He'll have played at the highest level of the Premier League, and in my opinion, Seamus Coleman probably played for longer at a higher level than Shay Given did in the Premier League. So he's definitely in consideration. But I just think that Shay Given he's so many Ireland caps. He was the main keeper for Ireland for so long that for now anyway, he trumps Seamus Coleman in terms of getting into the team. I do want to mention a couple of more names that we haven't got to as well. Geraldine McLaughlin is someone that maybe people outside of Donegal don't really know that well. She's been probably the most dominant female athlete in Donegal in terms of GAA sense for so many years now. Her team Termon won the All-Ireland Club final last year. They scored 311 in the final. She got 3-8 of that. She is an unbelievable player. I think you might remember Joe Brawley actually name-checked her as one of the best footballers in Ireland. She's an incredible player. Brendan Boyce, an Olympian as well in walking. I think someone that we do have to mention is Manus Kelly. He passed away last year when he was killed in a car crash when he was driving in the Donegal rally. And he had won that rally 3 times in a row. And just to put into context, I know many people might not be familiar with how big that is. The Donegal International Rally it attracts the best drivers in the world. Colin McRae drove in it. Sebastian Loeb won it. So it's not as if he's just driving against local drivers. He's driving against world-class drivers. He won it 3 times in a row. And he also did a lot for GAA around Donegal as well. So he's definitely worth mentioning in this list. Danny McDade, Kieran already mentioned. Mark English is someone who in a couple of years' time, who knows, he might actually be an Olympic medalist. So he'll definitely go onto the list if that is the case. But he's worth mentioning as well. Otherwise, Jason Quigley, another world medalist, silver medal or world championship boxer. You don't really get a lot of boxers in Donegal. So he's fighting at a massive level. And if he goes on to be a world champion, he's definitely worth considering as well. And outside of that, outside of probably the partaking in sport, Ricky Sims is probably worth mentioning as well. He's been the agent behind Usain Bolt and some of the best runners in the world as well. So he's a Mulford man, I believe. So he's definitely worth considering as part of it.
Come on, if we're wandering into agents, Enda, we gotta wrap this up. Give us who are the 4 people that you are deciding to put on the Donegal Mt Rushmore? Have you been swayed?
Right. I'm going to stick with my list. I'm going to go with Michael Murphy, Jim McGuinness, Shay Given, and Packy Boner.
Kieran Cunningham, you have now the opportunity to swap out one of those. Who are you taking out?
Sinead Lynch is shouldering Jim McGuinness off the stage. Sinead Lynch for Jim McGuinness.
A good way to end it, lads. Absolute pleasure. Fair play. Case is well made. Thanks a million this morning again to Coll of Off the Bow and Kieran Cunningham of the Irish Daily Star. That is the end of the Donegal Mt Rushmore. The debate rages on, but that's it for Donegal for the minute.
OTB AM's Mt Rushmore.
I'm sure it'll rage on. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people with their opinion on that. I'm sure they'll share it with us over the course of today and the coming days. And we very much look forward to that and welcome it, indeed. Right. How's the Head? It's our brand new series here on Off the Ball. We're checking in with a series of athletes to see how they're getting on, coping with the mental stresses and strains of dealing with lockdown. And we really want to hear from your stories as well, how it is that you're getting on, what it is you're leaning on to help you through these tough times, to get you through the isolation. We want to hear from you. Please do reach out and get in touch with us on Off the Ball. You can tweet us or you can use the WhatsApp as well on 0879 180 180. Send us through a message or a voice note or video, whatever it is you want, and we'd love to hear from your stories as well. We've the crappy quiz coming up a little bit later on. The Drive for 5, everybody's very excited about it. Can the master of the quizzes of late get it done? We shall see in just a few minutes' time. So that's coming up next. First of all, here's the Shelbourne striker Karl Sheppard on this morning's episode of How's the Head. He's here with Will on the future of the League of Ireland and why he has to be extra careful throughout the coronavirus pandemic.
I think it's more just about routine, really, for me. It's the first week or two wasn't great, I'll be honest, because you're thrown out of your routine completely. But now I'm sort of getting into a routine, getting up early again. I think most people in the country were probably going to bed at silly o'clock in the first couple of weeks. Now it's getting back into that routine, and now I'm up early, going to my running and sort of getting my work in that way. And then now I'm not finding it too bad. As I said, that routine is there, so the mind is at least in a good active place. Massive thing about footballers and say athletes in general is their routine. So they'll stick to a strict regimen throughout the year pretty much. So it's kind of, we're in a bit of limbo now where you're going, am I in a pre-season mode? Am I in season? I think it's more just about routine, really, for me. It's the first week or two wasn't great, I'll be honest, because you're thrown out of your routine completely. But now I'm sort of getting into a routine, getting up early again. I think most people in the country were probably going to bed at silly o'clock in the first couple of weeks. Now it's getting back into that routine, and now I'm up early, going to do my running and sort of getting my work in that way. And then now I'm not finding it too bad. As I said, that routine is there, so the mind is at least in a good active place. Massive thing about footballers and say athletes in general is their routine. So they'll stick to a strict regimen throughout the year pretty much. So it's kind of, we're in a bit of limbo now where you're going, am I in a pre-season mode? Am I in season mode? Am I resting now? So at the moment I've just taken it as it's, right, I'm going to keep training as hard as I can, like a pre-season, so that if it does come back in June, we're ready to go. So even in terms of your meals, everything like that, they'll be normally strict on these times. So for the first couple of weeks, I was sort of thrown off, and I was probably finding it a bit harder to occupy my mind than I should have been. So now I'm back to being strict, and I'm finding it a bit better as well now. In terms of saying my girlfriend, she's a little girl as well, and I've not been seeing them unless they're dropping off the food. I don't go shopping, just can't go down to the shops or anything like that, just in case. I have to be that extra bit careful than your average person. But in terms of going out and doing my runs, I have a field nearby that's pretty isolated, so I go out, do that, and then straight back home. And then that's the thing, when you're just at home, then it's just trying to keep yourself occupied. So look, it has its down parts, but I'm sure there's people a lot worse off than me. So you have fitness work and ball work and gym work. So the fitness side is fine. I'm quite good on doing that quite solo. So most off seasons, lads will sort of get into either a routine of doing it themselves or doing it with others, and I'm pretty good with the fitness aspect. But it's then when you're kicking a ball off a wall and you're waiting for it to come back to you, it's not as good as obviously having your teammates around or having to crack with your teammates. So that part's obviously a little bit tougher. And then you have at least we have Zoom classes to do now, so we've had them to do our upper body sessions and lower body sessions now. They're a bit challenging because instead of using squat racks, you're using, can be a broom or a brush that you're using instead of a squat rack. So it's not ideal, but you're having to do what you can in this tough time. It is the unknown that's the problem. So for us, if we were told no one can say when we'll be back definitely, or we may be back, or when the season will be scrapped at the moment. So for, I think, every athlete, they're probably just trying to go, right, if I keep myself in season mode now or in pre-season mode, fine. If we were told, right, it's definitely September, everyone would shut down now and they'd rest their bodies and go, right, because you want to hit peak at the right times. You don't want to be, say, doing running between now and then going, okay, it might be late July, and then you're still running, and then it's next thing, it's gone on and on and on for a few months, and then by the time the season does come around, your body's sort of shot already. So if it does start in September, come December, January, your legs will start giving up on you, and it's what happens to a lot of lads if, say, they've played a season back to back, or lads who come back, they'll start really well, but then towards the end of the season, their legs start to give up on them. It's just only so much you can sort of do. So it is the unknown that is the problem for us at the moment. I would almost say that in some cases, it's probably better to be a smaller club at the moment. So if you have, say, the Shamrock Rovers and Dawks, their wage bill will be very high, so their income, obviously, getting the stadiums filled and all that will be a very big loss. Whereas if you're a smaller club, it's not as bad. Now it is bad. I'm sure every club is feeling it, but thankfully at the moment Shelburne are in a good enough place. We're still getting paid as of now, but look, we know there's people all over the country losing their jobs. I have another job as well in a company called Cuckoo Coffee, and they were good enough to keep me on as well. So me and myself, I'm not in the worst position. So I have two great bosses that have said, look, we'll take care of you for as long as we can. So I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, I know there's clubs in, say, Pats today, they put up a statement that they have to stop paying their players, and you sort of head gets turned to them and your thoughts, and you're going, oh, they're in a really bad position, and no one sort of wants to see that. When you think of it as it could be 1/10 of your whole potential earnings taken away, it's massive. You maybe get 10 years out of the game if you're lucky. I'd say on average it's probably even less. So if you're getting maybe a year of your wage taken away, so 1/10 of your overall earnings in your lifetime in football, it's a huge loss. And especially when, as you said, players don't get paid 52 weeks in every club. So if you're getting 40 weeks, 42 weeks, 46 weeks, to get that taken away unexpectedly. Look, there's nothing that clubs can do, but it'll be a big loss to a lot of players, and I'm sure a lot of players will be feeling it if it happens. I'm quite a big gamer, so at the moment I'm playing either a lot of Call of Duty or Fortnite with Stephen Beattie and Shane Griffin from St. Pat's as well. So yeah, I do spend probably too many hours on that. Call of Duty, I more play that with my brothers. And Fortnite, it'd probably be, I'd like to think myself, but Sean McLaughlin, who went over to Hull, he plays with us sometimes. He's pretty good. He's probably top dog at the moment.
Chris Waddle.
Oh, you're kidding me. September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me? Is that right?
Salutations. Welcome along to the sharpest segment on a multitude of Irish platforms. It's the swanky, it's the chic, it's the splendido, classy quiz. Every Friday, we pit three of Team Off the Ball up against each other in a quiz of sporting factoids at the end of the week. But it's a far more dashing version of the quiz this time, as we're supporting those in the front line by dressing up for Formal Friday. So no more shorts all day. We want to see you running 5K in your tuxedo, how many keepy-uppies you can do in your suits and all that sort of thing. Tweet us. Hashtag Formal Friday is the hashtag you want to use. Your pictures of doing anything. Go to work in your wedding dress. Do whatever. Well, work from home, obviously. And then get on to offtheball.com/donate to help raise funds for our frontline heroes. Allow me to welcome today's classy contestants. Our first contestant today is the classiest man in Westmeath, coming in ahead of Sir Walter Raleigh. Raleigh walked, so this man could run. He's the most Elizabethan man I've ever met. Give it up for Adrian, who's your daddy, Barry.
Way to mess up the intro on.
You're very welcome.
What's the Walter Raleigh? What's that all about?
I just googled Westmeath people, and he has a Sir.
Walter Raleigh came up.
Yeah.
What?
I
might have to revisit in terms of sporting influence and legacy, he'd be in the conversation, wouldn't he?
Walter Raleigh, Paddy O'Shea, John Aldridge, the power tree from Westmeath, I think it's fair to say. Our next contestant.
Does Brezzy get in?
I'd be in the conversation, all right, Jay.
Good.
Our next contestant today is the classiest Mayo man since Louis Walsh. He's suited and booted like he's ready for the live shows. Judges' houses were a roaring success for this individual. Give it up for Nathan Nate Dog Murphy.
Good afternoon. How are we?
Very welcome.
Woo.
I like your braces.
Woo.
Thanks.
What's that US broadcaster? What's your man's name? King. Larry King.
Larry King, yeah, that's exactly the look I'm going for. I could actually get away with this every day, I think. I think Giles would have more respect for me if I made an effort.
Sure.
That's your wedding suit. I'm amazed that it fits you. Well done.
Oof. Wow. Wow, touche. I'll be doing my 5K in this today, no problem.
Did you bring your IMRO award home?
My IMRO award? Sorry, which one? Which one of my two IMRO awards?
Oh, there's two of them there.
Sorry.
I missed that.
You know.
God, you wouldn't have spotted it nearly.
Sorry, I don't. They were just sitting here when I arrived in today. Like I don't know. I wanted to hide them. I didn't want to show them off. But look, if they're here, they're here.
Absolutely.
I'll just sit with them.
Belated congratulations on all your success. Our final contestant today is the classiest Kildare man since Ernest Shackleton. He'll be carrying out multiple expeditions within his 2-kilometre radius this weekend. It's the explorer, Ger Gilroy.
Hey, there you go.
Welcome.
For
a county of Kildare's size, it's a bit shit, isn't it?
Cecil Day-Lewis as well. Daniel's dad, I think, had some Kildare connections.
Yeah, you're kind of living off the connection sort of card, aren't you?
We are a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I have been thinking a little bit about how the Kildare Mount Rushmore is going to go, and it's, not the longest program we're going to do when it comes to having a debate about who should be on the mount. It just isn't.
Yeah, like
Shawnee Johnson.
Is there anything outside of GAA players? Is there anything? Boxers.
There was jockey once or twice, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Is Johnny Murtagh from Kildare?
Well, technically no. I mean, Ruby obviously is. So that's grand. That's fairly straightforward. But Johnny Murtagh's made his home there since the time he was a teenager.
Yeah, like Paddy O'Shea in Westmeath, same thing.
Right, let's get straight into this. Round one is the boring questions round, never multiple choice. Question one.
I'm going for 5 in a row, by the way. It should be pointed out on. I can't believe that this isn't.
Oh, sorry. How did I forget that? You are going.
I haven't been in all the 5, so
whatever. You have been in the majority of them, Nathan. Actually,
you actually have been in quite a bit. The champ is going to become the historic, unprecedented champ today. So really, you can feel the history in the air. Question one for you, Adrian. So all these questions today, by the way, are based on 2005, and this is the boring questions round. The motion.
Bollocks! I presumed it was going to be a special quiz for Formal Friday, that we wouldn't be going down the 2005 route.
Okay, so what sort of questions would you ask based on suits?
I have no idea. I have no idea. You could have done a picture round with the Liverpool suits from anything that took a bit of effort.
Formal.
Instead of 2005, which Adrian Barry Adrian Barry took yesterday off work to sit at home researching 2005. I bet you. Oh, Adrian, tell me all 5 of Liverpool's penalty takers in the Champions League final. Oh, I just haven't noticed off the top of my head.
Like this, the exact same time in each of the last 4 episodes on, whether it's been Murphy and generally him, to be fair, people trying to get their excuses in early. Enough of that guff. Let's get on with the quiz.
Adrian, the motion to change the GEA's Rule 42 was passed in 2005. Can you tell me how many delegates voted in favour of the change? I will accept a margin of error of 25 votes.
I thought you were going to ask me which county proposed it, in which case I would have been all over that. But you're asking me how many delegates voted yes for it?
Yes. Who's Googling? Jerry, you Googling?
No. What's Nathan doing there?
What are you doing?
Yeah, lads, come on.
You need to know how many people are in Congress for this, do you?
Come on, Adrian, give me an answer.
It's the Congress part. What's the margin of error you're giving me?
25 votes.
25, come on.
Very generous.
Oof.
God, I'm really feeling
that
generous.
Suggests more than the number I had in mind, so I'm going to go with. I mean, there's not that many people in the room. I think you're being very generous. If I've got my numbers roughly right. In which case, I'll go
hurry up.
117.
No, not 117. You're more than 100 off. 227 is the answer. A big old Congress that year. So you don't score any points.
You haven't voted against it.
227 voted for it.
Okay.
Nathan, question one for you. Name the Liverpool team that started against AC Milan in the 2005 Champions League final.
Come on, he's a Liverpool fan.
Is he Googling? Are you Googling? Why is he looking?
What are you Googling?
What's that right hand? What are you doing with your right hand?
God, get that hand away.
Get off the laptop.
Come
on. I'm on the
That's
laptop.
your left hand.
This is the laptop.
This is actually cheating here.
Yeah.
Absolute cheating.
Where's your phone?
Oh my God.
No, but he's using the laptop to Google, apparently. It's
the full 11. Jesus, I always make a mistake here. Dudek, Finnan, Carragher, Jimmy Traore, Hupia.
5 out of 5.
Gerrard, Kuhl.
7.
He's Googling it. He's got it written in front of me. He's just pretending now that he's struggling with it.
As a Liverpool fan, this team is etched on your brain. It's the most famous game in Liverpool's
Vladimir
history.
Spitzer.
No. Etched on his laptop.
Spitzer did not start.
I literally watched it the other night.
I was
at half time, doesn't he?
I was planning on being really generous as well. I was planning on surprising you with 2 points for that if you got it correct, because I
Milan Barros.
Question.
Harry Kuhl.
Harry Kuhl.
Said Harry Kuhl.
That's a Sneacher.
Said Harry Kuhl.
Sneacher replaces Kuhl. Who comes on for Barros? Or who comes on for Finnan? Hamann comes on for Finnan.
Hamann comes on at half time.
The full team: Dudek, Finnan, Carragher, Hupia, Traore, Alonso, Garcia, Gerrard, Risa, Kuhl, and Barros.
Alonso and Garcia, the Spanish Armada. You forgot.
Yeah, no, I was about to get to them. Risa was the one that, because I was in my head, I was going, "Oh, Harry Kuhl would have been playing on the left wing."
It didn't suit you.
I've made
not
your
specialist topic, Nathan.
No.
Question one for you, Ger, and it's a question in from Pat Kelly on Twitter. Peter Canavan obviously came on as a sub after getting off after getting taken off in the 2005 All-Ireland final against Kerry. Who did he replace? You watched this back recently for an item, so it's a very easy question for you.
When he comes back on, who does he replace?
We should dress up more often.
Yeah, it feels good, doesn't it?
Feels like the first time I've worn pants in about 6 weeks.
It is the first time I've worn pants in 6 weeks.
Jocks, you mean?
Yeah.
Annie. Yeah.
Right.
And there's actually absolutely no need to, like...
No, I could just wear shorts.
Sorry,
that's what I've generally been doing. I've been putting on a shirt tucked into my shorts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Penrose, but it's wrong.
No, it's not Penrose. It's Enda McGinley.
Oh, bollocks.
So big fat 0 for everybody in round 1.
Oof.
As we move on to round 2, the 2005 Irish football round. It was the end of Brian Kerr. It was the end of Roy Keane. It was the end of our World Cup qualification hopes. 2005, not fondly remembered by Irish football fans. So let's test your knowledge on that year. Adrian, who was Ireland captain when Roy Keane finally retired at the end of 2005?
Pretty sure it was Kenny Cunningham.
Ah, come on!
Correct.
Well,
Well,
he's ridiculously easy question.
Champ.
Ridiculously
Just makes things look easy, doesn't he? He just makes
This is
it.
it. You are such a prick, Owen.
Well, like I knew
that's a lot of bollocks.
I knew that round 1 was going to be tough, so I've given it. Like, let's see how you do with these relatively easy questions.
Nathan, your last question was literally your specialist topic.
I'm sorry, your specialist topic is Kenny Cunningham.
Do me a favour, pal. Do me a favour.
It's true.
Do me a favour.
This weird love affair you have with Mal O'Kelly and Kenny Cunningham.
What a combo, actually, yeah.
Where does Mal come into it? Why do you love Mal so much?
He was possibly Ireland's greatest ever second row. Yes, the greatest ever second row. That was done out of about 30 caps by Declan Kidney, who had a bit of a penchant for his Munster lads. Simple as.
He has 90 caps. He has 90 caps.
Yeah, and still done out of about 30 more. So, yeah.
Nathan, this question came in from Matthew McConnell on Twitter. So the fate of your hands in the public, the fate in the hands of the public, I should say. How many games did Ireland win in the entirety of the 2006 World Cup qualifying campaign? I'm going to need the names of all the teams they beat.
Jesus Christ.
He's got his thinking face on.
Faroe Islands.
Or else he's having a shit.
So, sorry, in the 2006 World Cup qualifying campaign.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the
So,
same
didn't beat France, didn't beat Switzerland, didn't beat Israel. Or did we win away in Israel?
This is a classic Nathan response where he tells you how much he knows about everything, barring actually giving you the answer.
Faroe Islands. Surely beat somebody.
Look how clever I am,
Other
even
team.
if I get this question wrong.
Georgia and the Faroe Islands.
No. Wrong. The answer is 4. It was home and away against the Faroe Islands and Cyprus.
Ah!
God, another specialist topic for you, Nathan. Gone.
I have no recollection of the Cyprus games at all.
No.
Ger, who scored the winner in the only game Ireland lost in that qualifying campaign?
Thierry Henry.
Correct.
Like,
3
Jesus
easy
Christ.
questions.
That is the easiest question that's ever been asked in this quiz.
Didn't know that we played Cyprus.
Really isn't.
What, next week?
Nicholas Anelka. It could have been Anelka.
Or
Who
could have
handled, who handled the ball in Paris in 2009?
It's always when he's getting them wrong. Bitching and
2009.
moaning. Bitching and moaning.
Do we need pens and papers?
Anything more you want to say?
It's nonsense.
Round
His
3.
Kenny Cunningham question was way easier than who scored it. Like in.
No, it wasn't really. There were 3 very
Jerry,
simple questions.
you can't complain about that. You cannot complain about that.
I'm sorry, but like famously, Roy Keane has had a dig at Kenny, and Kenny has spoken at length about the honour of being the Ireland captain. And every morning, you look over my shoulder at a picture of Kenny on the front cover of a match program doing that.
Famously,
you know the answer, Jerry.
Famously, Kenny Cunningham was Ireland captain. Famously, Thierry Henry scored to beat Ireland. And famously, we played Cyprus in every single qualification campaign in the mid-2000s. Like, there were 3 gimmies.
Georgia.
And it's like Tiger Woods missing a 2-foot putt and blaming his caddy. That's what you're doing right now, Nathan.
Look, the caddy gave him the wrong read.
No, it was a straight-up putt. It was a straight lie.
That analogy doesn't work. Let's move. Come on.
Round 3, the Lions 2005 round. The Lions, coached by Alistair Campbell, had a pretty disastrous tour to New Zealand in 2005. Despite comparisons by Campbell between rugby and the war in Iraq, this round will test your knowledge on some of the on-pitch protagonists on that Lions tour. Adrian, Brian O'Driscoll was famously spear tackled, blah, 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 blah. We all know that. 11 minutes later, the Lions were down to 14 players in that first test.
Oh, the biggest moment of your career is reduced to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, come on. I'm going to play him that now. What do you have to say about that, Brian?
Well, it's more to do with the Lions and the All Blacks in general. 11 minutes. So that was 2 minutes into the game. 11 minutes later, the Lions were down to 14 players after which man was sin binned?
That is a good question to which I do not know the answer.
He was too shook. That's it. That's his answer. He doesn't know.
But I will be giving you something, Owen, you know that.
Thank you.
He waits for Alexa to give him the answer. Alexa, who was sin binned in the Lions tour in 2005?
Sorry, I don't know that one.
Alexa, you're useless. Right. I think it's somebody who might have been
pretty loud.
Ah, come on, here.
Yeah. Come on, let's go.
You rugby
Jason
man.
Robinson.
No. Anyone?
Will Greenwood.
Irish?
He was wired after drinking an energy drink. Paul O'Connell.
Oof.
Nathan, you should have. Pat Kelly is back here with another question. Who captained the British and Irish Lions in the second test after O'Driscoll got injured?
I can't remember anything about this tour now.
2005. Martin Johnson?
No.
He's retired, has he?
Gareth Thomas. And finally, Ger, to round it off with 3-0s, who scored the most points for the Lions across the 3 tests?
Stephen Jones?
Correct.
Yeah, get in. Come on, baby.
2-0-1 in favour of Ger at the moment after the 3 rounds. Round 4. The other stuff that happened in 2005 that's not sport round, it's a new fan favourite as we take you all out of your comfort zone and ask you questions based on 2005 that have nothing to do with sport. Adrian, question 4 for you. The M50 got completed in 2005 after how many years of construction? Is it A7, B17, or C27?
Oh, come on.
This is really a stupid question.
No, multiple choice is stupid.
Like what, from start to finish?
Completed, he said.
Yeah, but what are you talking about?
What's
the definition of
completion? You've got your information. You've got your information.
First
You've got a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right.
First car.
Is that what we're talking about?
From the first time that it was a star in the sky in the planner's heads, they're like, oh, wouldn't it be good to have a ring road?
Well, like that's a different question entirely.
Well, that's the question.
Is that what
an answer?
What's the question?
A, B, or C? A, B, or C?
How many years of construction on the M50?
Construction. So it was first time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when Bertie stuck a spade in the ground.
Yeah. It's obviously not 27. I'm struggling to think it would have been 17. Although you've gone with such outrageous numbers. Could you do that in 7 years? Probably not. Go with 17.
No.
7.
It was 27 years.
That's bullshit.
It's true.
That's not construction.
They did it in loads of little parts, Adrian. They did it in loads of little parts.
That's bollocks. That's not construction you're talking about. You're talking about move on. Bullshit question. That's bollocks. You know that. It never took them 27 years to build.
He's on the run.
That's bollocks.
They did it in all the different sections, you know. The M50 wasn't started today, Adrian.
Not 27 years.
Here. I'm good at 5 in a row is beckoning. Nathan, your eyes are off there to a different. What are you doing? What are you watching? You're looking at the wrong thing there.
Somebody's just walking by outside.
Oh yeah, okay.
People watching.
Exciting times.
Big cue cards going.
Help. Nathan, which of the following was not a headliner at
Oxford? Look at him on his computer.
What are you looking at?
On his computer.
Yes, I'm googling. How long did it take to build the M50?
It's right there.
What? Which right beside my laptop? Yes. I'm generally not Googling until I feel I get shafted with a question. Well, I'm not pre-Googling any answer.
No.
Move on.
You can let us know in a moment in the dictionary corner there, Adrian, whether or not that question was correct or not. Nathan, which of the following was not a headliner at Oxygen 2005? Was it A, Green Day, B, Foo Fighters, or C, Red Hot Chili Peppers? I've taken a stab that you might have been at this.
Is this the one where he's up on the shoulders going?
No, that was many years earlier.
Okay, so I've actually
no, I think I was
overestimated things.
It wasn't a very Green Day. Who? Green Day, Red Hot Chili Peppers, or Foo Fighters?
Green
Which
Day,
of them
Foo
wasn't?
Fighters, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah, which one of these was not a headliner yet? They didn't play the festival.
2005. Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Correct. Ger. Limerick woman Dolores McNamara won the Euro Millions in 2005, but how much did she win? Was it 105 million euro, 115 million euro, or 125 million euro?
125 million.
No, it was 115 million euro.
Fuck it.
So the scores. Have you done your Googling there, Adrian, by the way? Do you want to come back to us?
It says completed. It does say 27 years, but that's not construction.
Thank you very much.
But that's not construction, though.
Thanks for
that's
construction.
It says
completed point for using his computer.
To 2005.
Yeah. And sorry, how do we know? How do we know that Adrian doesn't have? Tell me everything about sport in 2005 up on his screen right now.
Yeah,
he does.
Well,
I do. I've got all that in one page, and it's on that one page that I can see. It tells me how many delegates were at Congress that year.
I turns out you Googled badly. That's not our fault.
Move on.
The 2005 section is over in our quiz anyway. Round 4 is the fun free magic number round. Contestants get 3 points. Like, what are you Googling now?
Move on. Jeez,
contestants get 3 points for getting the number exactly right.
Come on.
If no one manages that,
you're listening to Gerald.
You can share your screen on this. Share your screen and let us see what you're.
Share your screen.
This is a family show.
What do you mean share your screen? I'm on my phone and then I've my. Can we move on? Please move on. This is like classic Nathan Murphy and Ger Gilroy.
Lean back.
Lean back.
You wouldn't want
to have my pen and paper.
You wouldn't want to bring this repute onto the competition that you've won 4 times in a row. So as I say, contestants get 3 points for getting the number exactly right. The nearest contestant who doesn't go bust, if that doesn't happen, gets 2 points. The second closest gets 1 point. So if you don't mind, give us the following number. The number of Premier League titles won by Kenny Dalglish as a manager, plus the number of All-Stars won by Tipperary's Pádraig Maher, plus the number of times Ernie Els has won a major, plus the number of times Ryan Giggs has won the FA Cup. Your 30 seconds expire when Sinatra sings Bright Shiny Beads. So just go through those again. The number of Premier League titles won by Kenny Dalglish as a manager. The number of All-Stars won by Tipperary's Pádraig Maher. Plus the number of times Ernie Els has won a major. Plus the number of times Ryan Giggs has won the FA Cup. All right, pens down, folks. Adrian goes first. He's got 16.
I've got 13.
Ger's got 13.
15.
Nathan's got 15. Nathan's bang on the money.
Yes!
Balls! Shit! Ah.
Come on! Nailed it.
Let's go through those. The number of Premier League titles won by Dalglish as a manager.
There's my 15 that I have.
Pádraig Maher has won 6 All-Stars. Ernie Els has won 4 majors. And Ryan Giggs has won 4 FA Cups, which means...
4 FA Cups, wow.
Yeah, the scores...
Nathan, none of those right after the first one.
I did.
Ernie Els?
Ernie Els, yeah. I had
Pádraig
one
Maher?
more. I had 5 for Pádraig Maher and I had 5 for Ryan Giggs. Because I was going... Did Giggs not win in 94, 96, 99? Did he only win one more after that?
This is classic Nathan Murphy stuff again. Look at how much I know about Ryan Giggs. Well, actually, getting the answer fundamentally wrong, actually, as it turns out. But anyway.
There's one increase, then you don't get it correct. So that would be a good outcome here. Yeah, keep talking, Nathan.
Well,
you're right. Maybe Ryan Giggs did have another one.
No, come on. I got it spot on. So what do I get? 3 points?
It looks like you got 3 points. It looks like Nathan Murphy is going to be the Seamus Derby of this particular occasion. He is on 4 points. Ger is on 2 points. Adrian is on 1 point. On to the final. Our winner tonight will be decided in the round that separates the men from the boys.
Same thing happened last time out, by the way.
Did it?
Ger bottled it the last time.
Great. Our winner tonight will be decided in the round that separates the men from the boys. The Micheál Murray Hertigs from the Micheál Jordans. It's no team in particular ridiculously easy rapid fire round. We know how this works at this stage. 40 seconds, you get a question right, you keep getting asked questions, and you keep getting 1 point. You get a question wrong, you get minus a point, and we're on to the next person. Nathan, are you ready?
What do you see somebody? What do you? What are you doing?
I'm not doing
like he was at this earlier with that Liverpool question. There he was.
My hands are here.
Listen, we're gonna have to put in an embargo on accusations here. The childishness. Somebody's got someone at the door, and I just hope that doesn't interrupt us.
Nathan's wine has arrived.
Not this week, unfortunately.
We need to put an embargo on this childish nonsense of accusations at this point. Nathan, are you ready?
I raised a very good point a couple of weeks back about the 45 seconds. It just isn't long enough, and it received quite a lot of support on Twitter. I'm sure you noticed, Owen, because you were tagged in all of them. But look, you're sticking with it, even though it's not what the people want, but that's fine.
Will we change it up now?
No.
It's also not even, it's also not, it's 40
seconds. Will we start with the person in last?
No.
Yeah.
That's not what anybody wants.
No, and you have the power here. You decide wherever you want to run this, you have the power.
Nathan, you're 40 seconds. Are you ready?
Yes.
Your time starts now. In what city was last year's Champions League final played?
Madrid.
Correct. In what city was last year's Europa League final played?
Tallinn.
Too long. Baku. Name the only Cork man to make last year's hurling All-Star team, Ger.
That's Corgan.
Correct. What nationality is Sammy Hupia?
Finnish.
Correct. In what town will you find Brewster Park? Too long.
Come on!
It's Enniskillen. Which Premier League manager is the longest serving at their current club, Adrian?
Mikel Arteta. Like, this is bullshit.
No, Mikel Arteta. Anyhow, name the first pick in last year's NFL draft. Nathan, time is up.
Yeah, I have to say, this is farcical. This. Honestly,
I didn't win.
Isn't just pitching a moment.
No. I'm going to need an answer. I'm going to need an answer, Nathan. Hold on a minute.
No, he doesn't know. The time is up.
No.
Time's up.
I
I finished the
finished the
question.
Then you have to take a point off.
No.
I know
I finished the question.
Pass it over. Pass it over. It's after time.
If he doesn't answer, you take a point off.
Calm down.
I won.
No, you haven't won. I asked you a question, and I got it in before the end of time. I need an answer.
You're out.
Yeah, you know the answer or not now? Come on.
I don't know. Patrick Mahomes.
No, it was not Patrick Mahomes.
Brady.
It was Kyler Murray.
Pass the question over.
It was who?
Which means
Connor Murray.
Wait, hold on a minute. Nathan finishes on 3. Ger finishes on 3. We have a tie.
No 5 in a row for Barry. That's the main thing.
No, but listen, honestly, that is a farce. Like Murphy, took about 15 seconds to answer 2 questions.
We might just
Gilroy was at the same stuff when it came to him. Like
I got distracted because.
What was the question you were asked, Adrian? What was the question you were asked?
He's the longest serving manager.
I didn't get the answer.
Come on,
bit like yourself.
Okay, lads, I've tossed the coin before coming on air. If it goes to a tie break and it's Ger versus Nathan, Nathan's won the toss. So, Nathan.
This is bullshit. I've lost the same toss 3 weeks in a row. This is absolute bullshit.
Come on, how many Ireland caps, Nathan, does Mike Ross have?
Ger does a quick bit of Googling.
Mike Ross.
Alexa,
how many caps does Mike Ross have?
Can't hear you. She's in my earphones.
Damn it. Mike Ross. 58.
58, sure.
59.
It's 61.
Oh! Justice.
Wow. What a thrilling finale to the classic quiz that was. Unbelievable.
Those need to be tweaked up. How many questions did you ever get to ask in that round? 4 between the stalling. Oh my God.
I usually only write about 10, so it's ideal actually. I never get to the 10, so I can use
well, I think 2 weeks ago I got 8 of them in a row right, so he obviously has plenty of questions, Adrian. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah. Listen, another comment that reflects extraordinarily well on Nathan.
How did you do this week, Nathan? How did you do this week?
Well, I just got screwed over by some imaginary clock that I didn't hear bing.
I'm sorry, all you managed was to flukily get the magic number right. Other than that, you didn't actually get any other questions correct.
Yes, I did.
You started with a massive lead. You finished a minus point from your rapid fire round. Justice is still.
You got 1 point in the rapid fire round.
Well, enough of this.
I got 2 questions right.
Enough of this sick trash talk. You guys really are undercutting each other savagely here. Congratulations, Ger. Unlucky, Adrian, and extreme unluckiness to you, Nathan. Happy Formal Friday, everyone.
OTB AM.